consent agenda. Is there anyone on the council that wishes to remove an item from the consent agenda?
I would, Your Honor. Item F.
All right, 4F. Member Sprague. Anybody else? All right. Is there a motion to approve the balance of the consent agenda with the exclusion of 4F?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and second, we approve the balance of the consent agenda with the exclusion of 4F. Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed say nay. Carried. And now we will handle 4F. Member Sprague.
Thank you, Your Honor. This is for emergency repair for 3 furnaces in the lower level of the arena. And I see that the arena has already undergone some cost savings and utility expenses due to separate energy efficient changes implemented within the last year. And I'm just wondering what the return will be for the 3 furnaces being installed.
And I think I saw Susie Miller here earlier from the...
We do. We have Susie here, and I wonder if she can come up and talk a little bit about those actual projects. I can tell you that I believe that the projects we've done previously there were part of the McKinstry program.
Correct.
So the savings that were
building
achieved by
envelope.
those...
There's additional savings that we had done.
Yeah, so those savings have already been kind of leveraged into that debt.
But then we also implemented a, first off, I do not have the answer to your question about the different, they're 96% efficient, the current ones are 80%. So we have been told that we would have significant savings, but not the exact dollar amount. The other changes that we made is we put timers on radiant heaters that were in the east and south arenas. And that is where we're seeing that direct savings of about the $30,000, because we are also seeing other saving, or not the full $30,000, but some of those.
Okay, and then there's a rebate on this particular item as well.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Just so that folks at home are clear about what's transpired here, this was an emergency repair. You had to replace 3 furnaces at
Yeah,
at
we have
Braemar.
3 furnaces in the lower level that heat the office area, an area in the lower level, and then also part of the lobby.
All right, stand by here. Member Bennett has a question as well.
Yes, thank you. I received a telephone call earlier today regarding this project, and the question may be for you, Ms. Miller, or it may be for Director Olson, but or for Engineer Houle. But in what instances, in what kind of situation would the city do this kind of repair or installation itself with its own staff, and in what situations would we hire, as we are doing here, an outside firm to make this installation?
Good. Brian Olson coming forward here, Public Works Director.
Councilmember Bennett and members of the council, on a project of this size, it definitely would basically exhaust all the manpower that we currently have in the HVAC division. And generally we looked for, if there's an area of specialty, then we would hire a contractor to do that. Plus then there would be an extended warranty on that as well.
I would add to that the staff that we do have in our HVAC area, particularly this time of year during the kind of September, October, and April, May, is a time that really stresses them because we're experiencing swings in weather and they're having to change buildings over about this time of year too. So it's not a good idea from a staffing standpoint to tie them up into a big project like this because they're really going from building to building to building.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good. Member Sprague, would you care to move this matter?
So moved.
I will second.
It's been moved and seconded we adopt 4F, which is the authorization by the council for the purchase of the 3 furnaces and air conditioning units at Braemar Arena. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed say nay. Carried. That completes the consent agenda portion of the meeting this evening, and we're going to move on to special recognitions and presentations. And the first one we have Chief Scheer is here to award the Fire Department Certificate of Merit to Tom Shirley and Doug May for an extraordinary rescue that they effectuated out at Centennial Lakes. And I'll let the Chief talk about it. Chief, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. Tonight we have the honor to recognize 2 of our own employees, Doug May and Tom Shirley. If you want to come up, Doug, Tom. we are recognizing them as actually heroes tonight. There's a lot of definitions of heroes, but the one I found I think is most fitting is heroes are people who do what has to be done when it needs to be done. And I'll give you a little background of the story. On Tuesday, October 2nd, a small group of people were dropped off at the entrance of Centennial Lakes Park. They were there for a morning of walking, chatting, some fresh air. An elderly man separated from the group along with his fishing pole and proceeded towards the lake just north of Hughes Pavilion. And I didn't know that there was that many fish in the lake, but it turns out there's quite a few in Centennial Lakes there. The man stepped down to the lowest step near the lake, and he lost his balance. He actually fell into the water, and panic set in on the gentleman, and he ended up flailing and beginning to tread further out into the lake. Park manager Tom Shirley rushed over to see what all the commotion was about, and the group was gathered around. There was attempts to direct the man back to safety at the side of the lake, but it was deemed hopeless as the man did not speak English and he was in a panic state. As the man's head began to sink under the water, both Tom Shirley and park maintenance supervisor Doug May both jumped into the lake and quickly brought the man above water and lifted him up to the landing. 911 was called, and the two stayed with the man until the Edina fire paramedics arrived. And thanks to their quick actions of Tom and Doug, tragedy was averted. So tonight we're going to honor both these gentlemen with the Edina Fire Department Certificate of Merit. The Certificate of Merit is given to a person for saving a life or property or attempting to save a life or property, and it's the highest award given to non-fire department personnel. So Tom and Doug, you truly are our hometown heroes. Not only did they rescue this guy, but they continued to work and had to go to meeting with some wet clothes on after that. So there was one great quote that I found that described people like this. It's a quote about heroes, and it says, "To the world, you may be just one person, but to that one person, you are the world." So congratulations.
Congratulations.
Mr. Mayor, can we get a picture with you? That'd be great. Thanks.
Thank you.
Can I go up here and get a picture? Or first, you got any words you want to say?
Well, just thank you. That's it.
Doug, you know?
Yeah, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Can we have a quick picture?
Okay, snuggle up, boys. Here's the first one. Doug, big smile. And one more. Perfect, thank you. Thanks very much.
Next, we're going to hear a little bit about a terrific program that started in Edina a few years ago called Kids Voting. And we've got Julie Rogers-Bascom with us this evening from the school district, and I think Katie Quinn, one of our students, coming up to tell us a little bit about the Kids Voting project for this year, for this election season. Julie, you want to start out, or Katie, you want to start out?
I'm going to start out today. First of all, I want to thank you all for letting me be here today.
Let me just back up a second. Would you tell us your full name and where you live?
Okay, I'm Katie Quinn, and I live on 6020 Wooddale Avenue.
Great, thank you.
All right. So today I want to tell you guys a little bit about Kids Voting Edina. First of all, I want to introduce myself. I'm Katie Quinn, and I'm a senior at Edina High School. And Kids Voting Edina is a nonpartisan joint effort between Edina Public Schools and the City of Edina. And we also have a lot of help from sponsors such as the Edina Education Fund, the Edina Community Foundation, as well as the League of Women's Voters Edina, and the Edina Chamber. During the next 3 weeks, Edina teachers are going to be focusing on getting their students ready for the polls. Students are going to be learning about what makes a democracy. They're going to be learning about issues on the actual voting process, as well as why we vote. Another cool component about this curriculum is they actually get to look at the ballot they're going to be using at their own little elections. So I think that's kind of fun. They get to see the ballot that they're going to use. And one of the reasons why we're doing this is because one of the biggest barriers for young people and new voters is that they don't know how to vote. And research shows that communities that have participated in projects like this, like Kids Voting Edina, have actually raised their voter turnout by 3 to 5%, so that's pretty cool. As well as the 18 to 24-year-olds, they have increased their voter turnout to up to 14%. So by participating in this, we can be sure that the young people of Edina will be ready to vote when they turn 18, and they can be active participants in their community. So after students learn all this information, they get to go home and they get to go to the polls with their parents, and they get to vote in their own Kids Voting Edina election. So from 4 to 8 p.m., volunteers are going to help students vote on their own ballots, and they're going to be voting on the same candidates and the same issues that their parents are going to be voting on, so that's kind of cool. It's kind of like a little family activity. And although these results are not official and they won't be counted in the actual election, we're going to tally them up and we're going to report them to the different Edina schools, and we're going to report them to the media as well, so it's kind of a big deal. Another thing that I'm really excited about is Edina High School gets their own voting experience. Because high schoolers are a little too cool to go with their parents to the polls, they get their own opportunity to vote from 7 o'clock to 8:25 a.m. in the morning, so right before they actually go to school. So I'm kind of excited about that. I get to do that. And my first goal tonight was to talk to you about this cool, important program, Kids Voting Edina, and how it really connects kids, schools, parents, and the city of Edina, as well as volunteers. But my other goal is to ask all of you and encourage you to volunteer with me and be a Kids Voting Edina election judge. It's a really small time commitment. It's a 1-hour training as well as a 2-hour shift on November 6th from 4 to 6 or 6 to 8 p.m. But I do know that some of you are on the ballot, so you unfortunately can't volunteer with me, maybe next year or the year after that. But Kids Voting Edina is really trying to generate excitement in these young people. And, I know I've always been excited about voting, and I can't wait until I get to do it next election. So we're just trying to generate overall excitement about the voting process and also kind of set the foundation for their community involvement in the future and hope that it carries on into their adulthood. I know I'm excited to cast my vote because I am only 17 years old and I missed the election by kind of a long shot, but that's okay. But when I am 18 and I am old enough to vote, I can't wait to vote, and I will know how thanks to Kids Voting Edina.
Katie, you did a beautiful job.
Oh, thank you.
Julie, anything additional?
I do have a few things.
Sure.
In fact, I'm hoping to walk you through an example of what it looks like in the schools. Isn't she fabulous?
Yep, she
and
did a
I
great
am
job.
so excited that people like Katie, young people like Katie, are going to be leading the way. I mean, this program has given her an opportunity to find her voice and to be excited about voting, and it's very contagious. I'm really excited. Thank you, Katie, for all your good work. I think Kids Voting Edina is also a great example of the partnerships that happen between the city and the school, between the Ed Fund and the Community Foundation, between the Chamber and between the League of Women Voters. This is an all-community effort. So I think it's a great example of how members in Edina community are coming together. I am going to ask Katie to hand out a ballot. I have 10 ballots. Now, I'm playing the role as an election judge, so I can't talk to you about the content of the ballot. So I would ask that you all just vote yes or no on these issues. Our viewers can take a look at this vote as well. You can see that ballot A is asking you to vote for either school, yes or no, recess, yes or no, ice cream, homework, and television. So, now I'll ask Katie to pass out ballot B. So I'm hearing some chuckling. This is an example of an elementary lesson that happens in some of our schools. So did you notice a difference between ballot A and ballot B?
Indeed.
Yeah, gee. And did you change your vote, having looked at ballot B? And why do you think, this is a question that we would ask the students, why do you think it's important to understand what's on the ballot? This is an example of how kids get a chance to examine the process of voting, and that some of these are real. This is a real thing. This is a real thing when they turn 18. I am, for my last handout, you can see the teacher in me coming out. I have an example of the kids voting ballot, what it will look like. So as you can see, there are actual pictures of all the candidates in the presidential election, along with some other races. And also on the back side, there are the local races. So kids get a chance to see not only is this a local, but it's a national election as well. I invite you now to take a look at the public service announcement that was updated this year thanks to Scott Denfield at the city.
Katie, do you have more than one brother?
I have a twin brother and I have an older brother.
Oh, I bet I met your twin brother a couple months ago, so it's nice to meet you.
My brother said that he
Bring your kids to the polls. On Election Day, Edina students of all ages can join their parents at the voting booth, thanks to an exciting initiative called Kids Voting Edina. Kids Voting is a nonpartisan, nonprofit organization dedicated to promoting civic awareness among tomorrow's leaders and decision makers across the country. On Election Day, Edina students will take part in kids voting and vote on congressional, state, and local races. Edina Public Schools kindergarten through 9th grade teachers have been preparing kids for the polls with Learn by Doing exercises, hands-on activities, and critical thinking lessons. By guiding youth through the real-life voting process, Kids Voting hopes to generate an excitement for the democratic process that will extend well into adulthood. A kids' voting poll will be open at every adult polling location in Edina from 4 to 8 p.m. Make voting a family affair. Plan to vote with your kids between 4 and 8 p.m. on Election Day and encourage them to take part in this year's election.
Questions for either Julie or Katie? It's just a terrific program. I participated in it a couple of years ago, and it was really rewarding, and it was really enjoyable to see the kids so enthusiastic, the little kids. So, and Katie did an exemplary job. Thanks. Any other questions or comments, folks? Okay. Well, thanks for coming.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, we're going to move into the public hearing portion of the agenda. And the first matter we have in front of us is a continuation of a public hearing involving the Carsons Hill neighborhood. And Director Houle has this matter.
Mayor and members of the council, tonight we have the continuation of the final assessment hearing for the Carsons Hill neighborhood. It was continued from October 2nd to tonight. I'm going to go through the same presentation I gave last time just to refresh your memory on the project. The Carsons Hill neighborhood is located just east of Blake Road and north of Vernon Avenue in the northwest part of the city. The costs for the project were $1.2 million for the street portion of the project, $352,000 for the stormwater fund, $158,000 for the water fund, $179,000 for this out of the sanitary sewer fund, with a total cost of $1.9 million. There was about 36% was paid out of the utility funds for this project. The assessments costs for the project were $1.254 million. It's 161 REUs. That was a question that was asked last time during the public hearing, prior to opening up for the public hearing. And I'll explain the difference between the pending assessment and the final assessment on the next slide. So the cost per residential equivalent unit is $7,743.20. The estimated assessment was $9,300 for about a 17% reduction. The question that we had on October 2nd was on our pending assessment roll we had 162 REUs. On the final assessment roll we have 161. When we looked at this during the project hearing, staff had actually put these two lots, 6105 and 6101 Idlewood, as two different REUs. When we looked at it closer, the house on 6101, these are owned by the same family. The house at 6101 actually encroaches on the second lot. So we reduced that down to one REU, as our past practice has been when we're assigning REUs on lots. With that, I would recommend approving the special assessment improvement number BA 370 per the attached revised assessment roll. With that, I'll take any questions you may have.
Questions for Director Houle? Anybody? All right. Thank you. Stand by. And I'm going to open this matter up to a public hearing. And we're ready for public testimony on the proposed special assessment regarding the Carsons Hill neighborhood. Is there anyone that wishes to come forward and testify or comment or inquire? Seeing no one coming forward and hearing nothing from the audience, is there a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Moved and seconded, we close the public hearing regarding the proposed special assessment for the Carsons Hill neighborhood. Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed say nay. Carried. Do we have a motion?
So moved. Second.
All right, we've got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? And we need a roll call.
Member Brindle?
Aye.
Member Sprague?
Aye.
Member Swenson? Aye. Member Bennett?
Aye.
Mayor Hovland?
Aye. And the next matter that was on the agenda, at least the one we received with our packets, had a public hearing scheduled for the 7501 France Avenue project. That public hearing has been canceled. Director Teague, is that correct?
That's correct. The applicant is revising their site plan, and it will go back to the Planning Commission. So in a sense, we're starting all over with that one.
Do you need a motion to cancel the public hearing?
Yes, please.
All right.
So moved. Second.
Moved and seconded, we cancel the public hearing regarding the proposed project at 7501 France Avenue. Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed say nay. Carried. Next is a matter that is also going to require a continuance. The Southdale Apartments, they're still visiting, I think, with folks in the neighborhood, and they asked that that matter be pulled from the agenda. Is there a motion to continue the public hearing to November 5, 2012 with respect to the Southdale Apartments?
I would second, but I have a question on
Sure.
that. Where are we on counting the days?
We are almost, we're approaching at the 60-day mark. Staff has sent out the 60-day extension letter. So we're okay time-wise in terms of this 2-week delay.
Any possibility of moving that one more meeting back? Because I'm not going to be here on November 5th.
We have had some discussions with the applicant, and they are unable to attend the next meeting on November 20th. So they were hoping to be on for the 5th, but I think as far as the 120-day rule, we would still be safe even if it were delayed until December.
It would be nice to have a full complement of council members here.
Well, and since we're delaying it per their request, I'm okay with their motion, but my motion really is predicated on the fact that I would like the clock to be extended by them because we're giving them more time. So we have everyone here tonight. We would have everyone here in the next meeting, and they can't come. So how do we handle that, Carrie?
No, they can come the next meeting, but they can't come the second meeting of November. Member Sprague can't be here next meeting.
Okay.
And Member Brindle will have that
So it'd be the first week in December.
So, yeah, we could withdraw the motion and then change it, continue it to the first meeting in December. What's that date? Let's see our calendar in front of us here.
December 4th.
December 4th.
I'll move that.
Do you want to withdraw your
Sure,
main
I'll
motion?
withdraw my
You want
second.
to withdraw your second?
I'll withdraw my second.
All right, now do you want to restate the motion? Is there a continuance on this matter, a request for a continuance or a motion for continuance to December 4th?
So moved.
2012. All right, second?
Second.
All right, discussion. All those in favor of continuing the Southdale apartment matter to December 4th, 2012, say aye.
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 Opposed, say nay. Carried. And then the next public hearing involves the proposed produce stand in the regional medical district.
Bear with me a minute here while I pull up the presentation. Okay, thank you, Mayor, members of the council. Before you is an ordinance amendment. This comes to us as part of the Dewtown initiative. The Fairview Southdale Hospital would like to have a small-scale farmers market at the northeast corner of 65th and Drew. Here is 65th and Drew. This is the emergency entrance into the hospital. The little building here is the essentially the mechanical building. And they would like to do the farmers market in this grassy area located right here. The market would consist of up to 5 vendors, no more than 5. They would be selling fruit, vegetables, herbs, and fresh-cut flowers. They would like to do this one day a week on Tuesdays between 2 and 5 p.m. between the months of June and October. This use is currently allowed in our PCD zoning districts. So the map on the screen, the PCD districts, are all of the red areas. This is Southdale here. So most of the area around Southdale currently allows a produce stand, subject to a permit that's issued by the city manager. Over the years, we haven't had too many requests for these produce stands. We've had an occasional one at Southdale, but not too many. So the goal of the ordinance before you is to allow this type of use, but at the same time protect our existing businesses who sell these same types of products in their stores. Currently, the ordinance does not define a produce stand, so the ordinance before you includes a definition. And it would allow a produce stand in the regional medical district, the area highlighted in green in the stand, as an accessory use, again, subject to that permit that's issued by the city manager or staff. This was reviewed by the Planning Commission at their last meeting, and they're unanimously recommending approval of the ordinance. And if the council is okay with this, staff would recommend that you waive the second reading. Rob Grumman is here from the hospital to answer any questions, and with that, I can stand for any questions that you may have.
Questions for Director Teague? I do. Member Brindle, and then Member Sprague.
Okay, thank you. I did contact Brad Beard, who is president of Fairview Southdale, about this and asked for some detail. And what he told me is during the summer months, for a few hours, one day a week, as an organization, we're trying to encourage healthy lifestyles, and having fresh produce is one of our top requests from our employees. So this is to serve the employees of Fairview Southdale and not necessarily the public. We would not advertise to the public. We're looking to have the vendors located on the lawn, as you say, And it's a win-win for employees and for Fairview, as the employees are requesting to have a farmer's market on site, and Fairview is looking to encourage our employees to be healthy, trying to support them in their lifestyle. So that's the background behind this. So it really is for serving the employees of the hospital and not the public.
Member Sprague, you had a question?
Yeah, I just had a question about the exact location and what is there adequate parking and circulation? But since it's not really a public-driven market, and it sounds like it will be the employees already parked on the site.
Right. And maybe a patient or two. There is a little, in that utility building on the site, there's a parking lot there. If they really needed it for that limited time, they could clear that parking space and make those spaces available.
Okay.
Member Swenson.
I can't tell from the picture we have looking down. I can see crosswalks on two sides of that intersection. Do we have crosswalks on all four, either Director Teague or Director Houle? And is it a four-way stop, if I'm not mistaken?
It is. It is a four-way stop, and if you just go 1 second, I can tell you if they have.
Because we have medical buildings along Drew, and then we have the medical office building.
We only have a marked crosswalk on two sides, on the
what
westerly
I thought.
side
The
and
west
on the
and the south?
And the northerly side. There is no crosswalk as you go east on 65th Street to the east, and then there's not a sidewalk on the east side of Drew Avenue also.
Well, at a minimum, I think we need a crosswalk between this pad and the hospital, if that's doable before they open in the spring.
There is one that actually is
Okay.
On the north side.
Okay, there is. If it's possible to put it all four ways around, it would probably be in the best interest of having it, because I know it's for the employees of the hospital, but you don't want to preclude anyone that's within walking distance to walking there safely.
Other questions for Director Teague?
Yes, thank you.
Member Bennett.
Following on the concerns expressed by Member Brindle and by Member Swenson, understanding that the intention is to serve the employees of the hospital, the public will not be barred from visiting this. Is that correct?
I would think so. That's right.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, good. Other questions for Director Teague at this point in time? All right, thank you. Stand by, please. I'm going to open this matter up for public hearing. And Mr. Grumman, welcome.
Well, thank you very much. My name is Rob Grumman. I'm one of the administrators at Fairview Southdale Hospital. I'm here tonight on behalf of our Farmers Market Committee. I'm actually a resident of Minnetonka, but I work here in Edina, of course. All the questions that have been asked and answered tonight are true. Councilmember Brindle, you're correct that this is being driven by our employees, but the reality is that we know that anything we do on campus, we have patients that come and participate, and so we're not going to restrict them. We also know that there will be people in adjacent buildings who will possibly come. Our intent is that it's driven by our patients, though, or excuse me, our employees primarily. The parking lot that is adjacent to the property or to the area where we'll have the vendors is actually the parking lot that's at our power plant, and we're actually going to clear that on those days, and that's where the vendors will park, so there won't be any offloading and onloading on the street, so we're not congesting the street. I can't 100% guarantee you that a car won't stop, but our intent is that both our power plant staff and the security people that are down usually at the end of the property where the emergency department is, our intent is to make sure that they're watching, and we'll try to make sure that people don't stop there. We think that the vast majority of people who will be coming on foot, not only our employees, but perhaps people from the colony or from across the street and that sort of thing. We do intend to restrict this to 1 day a week between June and October. Obviously, weather permitting, we'll go into October, but if it gets a little cold, we may restrict it. We've talked about doing this from 2 until 4. From 2 until 5. I'd like to have the capacity to actually do 4 hours a day, if possible, under the permit, but we would not do any more than 4 hours a day. So I'll be happy to answer any questions you have.
Questions for Mr. Grumman? All right, thank you.
Yeah, very good, thank you.
Is there anyone else in the audience that wishes to testify regarding this matter? Seeing no one coming forward, is there a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded, we close the public hearing. Discussion? All those in favor of closing the public hearing, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say nay. Carried. This has been a regular topic at the Dewtown Steering Committee that I'm on with Fairview Southdale, Park Nicollet, and Alina. I think this is a laudable goal for the hospital to provide fresh fruits and vegetable access for their employees right on the site, part of their health and wellness initiative as well. So I intend to support it. Anyone else have a comment or want to make a motion? Member Swenson?
I have a comment and then I'll make a motion. Because the sidewalk that goes along there is on the south side of the cross street, Wayne, is it possible to get it striped from the east side going up?
We can answer the question if we could stripe a crosswalk on the east side of the intersection.
Yeah.
We'd have to put in a landing pad on the southeast corner of the intersection.
So there isn't a sidewalk going along the north side of that building on Drew?
There is not a sidewalk.
So there's really no sidewalk then coming from the colony here to this farmer's market, correct?
That's correct, but there is a sidewalk on the south side of the power plant that cuts across the parking lot, and it stops at the
and that stops
the easterly border of the property. Yep.
Okay.
All right.
I'll make a motion to approve this.
Second.
Moved and seconded, we approve this matter. Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Excuse me, Your Honor.
Do we need a roll call?
Are you waiving?
Oh, excuse me.
Waive second reading.
Yep.
If it includes waiver, then we need a roll call.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll second that.
All right, so now we need a roll call with the waiver of second reading.
Member Sprague?
Aye.
Member Swenson?
Aye.
Member Bennett?
Aye.
Member Brindle?
Aye.
Mayor Hovland?
Aye. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Mr. Krugman, and thanks to the hospital for thinking of this as part of our wellness initiative in the community. So, all right, now we are moving to the community comment portion of the agenda. Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to come forward and address a matter with the council that's not on the agenda this evening? All right, now we will move along to the reports and recommendations portion of the agenda. And the first matter there under 8A is the consideration of the special assessment rule with regard to the Minnehaha Woods neighborhood reconstruction improvement.
Mayor and members of the council, this is the final assessment for the roadway improvements for BA 334, the Minnehaha Woods neighborhood. The public hearing was actually closed on October 2nd, and the decision that the council did not call the question for the decision and actually continued it on to tonight's meeting, October 16th. If I would just refresh everybody's memory of where the neighborhood is located. It's just west or just east of Wooddale Avenue and west of Minnehaha Creek on the east side, 54th Street to the north, and about 56th Street to the south. Some of the items of clarification that included in my staff report tonight was one on special assessment agreements. The second one was on sanitary sewer service costs. The third one was on engineering fees. On the special assessment agreements, what I wanted to point out, and these are just kind of simplified versions of what's in the staff report, but there's 95 special assessment agreements that were processed. There's about 192 properties in the district, but 95 folks actually came to us and said we'd like to put the costs of our service upgrades, which also include in some cases water service and sanitary sewer service, onto our special assessments. The discrepancy that we had at the last meeting was that we had not accounted for 11 at the time of agreements that weren't signed. We did receive one yesterday that's up on the dais, and we reflected in the revised assessment roll. We also have noted that 8 of the special assessment agreements have changed ownership since they were signing the agreement itself. The second item here of clarification was the sanitary sewer service costs. What I put together in the staff report is tried to simplify down how we derived from the feasibility costs of $4,500 to where we're at today at the $1,600. And part of that explanation was as we went through the process that we used on this, which is identical to the process that we used in the country club that was successful with the 550 homes on that project, was basically based on the ratio of the services. So what I mean by the ratio of the services is that you have some deep services and some shallow services, which obviously are going to cost different prices for a contractor to repair those. And so the feasibility study looked at a number of services, kind of assumed that they were pretty much all the same services when they went into the feasibility study. As they dived into more detail during the design phase of the project, they and based off of what the outcome of the country club is that our consultant SCH actually brought it down to about 122 participants that were assumed to participate in the city contractor utilizing the city contractor. So when they took the ratios for the 122 participants, the bid costs would have been about $3,500. What came out of the public hearing was that we didn't communicate to them, and the reason being is that we don't know what the final ratios were. So if we were to say it would have been $3,500, it could have been higher. Because in my staff report, I actually have a hypothetical scenario that if you had more deeper services and less shallower services, it could have been even $3,800, even higher than that if we had engineering services on. So the final outcome was that 12 participants, properties participated in the city contractor repairing their services. 11 of them were a type 1, which is a shallower service. So that's why the final cost was down to $1,600. To go forward in the future, our Richmond Hills project was set up the same way. I don't believe we'll be able to change that. But in the 2013 projects, we're going to be looking at possibly setting a price, and so that there's no second guessing when you get to the actual construction part. But that's in the future. We're at it right now. The engineering fees, I think in the staff report, I demonstrate that there's a couple other projects that we show that were pretty complicated projects that are very similar to the fees that were charged by SEH. When we look at the fees, it dawned on me today that I don't know if everybody realizes that the engineering fees are not just assigned to the special assessment costs, is that we actually distribute them proportionately to the utility costs also. So on this one, the total engineering costs were around $930,000. $374,000 was on the special assessed column, and the other utilities, which was around $500,000. Those utility costs or fees cover the water system improvements, the sanitary sewer system improvements, and the storm sewer system improvements, which includes extending out storm sewer system, putting in catch basins. In this case, we had the West 56th Street Bridge, which is a basic glorified culvert on that one, was in the storm sewer system, and then the curb and gutter is always charged out of the storm sewer fund. The cost for the project were about $1.5 million that came out of the streets or special assessed. The stormwater fund was $771,000. The bridge, like I say, came out of the stormwater fund was $142,000. The water fund was $1.3 million. And the sanitary sewer fund was $800,000. So the total cost is about $4.5 million. About 66% of this cost were out of the city's utility funds. The staff's recommendation to approve the special assessment, BA 334, per the revised assessment rule that's before you tonight. With that, I'll take any questions you may have.
Questions for Director Houle? Member Sprague.
A couple questions for you. So at the time the bid was revised with more specific allocations, estimated allocations between type 1 CIPP and type 2, the estimate was roughly $3,500. So the original estimate of $4,500 had not decreased that much at that point. I mean, it was $1,000 less, still an estimate, and still without a final ratio. And so I guess I don't know if that was significant enough to change behavior and would have cause someone to do something else, even had it been released. But I also understand that you don't just release bids without having some type of basis. The other question I have is, we outsource projects when they are complicated, as you say. Can you elaborate on what that means from a technical point of view?
Yep.
Because in the correspondence that came in from the neighborhood, they were comparing us to Carson Hill and some other projects, not the ones that you have referenced. So I really want to drill down and understand the technical difference.
Yep. Councilmember Sprague and council members, when we look at projects, we typically do about 4 or 5 projects a year. That's financially, that's what the city can handle. Our staff can handle about 3 to 4 projects, depending upon the size of the projects themselves. So there's at least one project a year that typically a larger project that will consult out, ask the consultant to give us a quote on that. Those types of projects are typically a little bit more complicated. For instance, the Minnehaha Woods had a full water main repair replacement, so that involves a lot more time in the neighborhood, meaning that you'll have a lot more staff out in the neighborhood during the construction part of it, overseeing the basic construction, overseeing the sewer service repairs that are done in the right-of-way, coordinating with the neighbors. So it's a lot more in the neighborhood, a lot more attention given to the neighborhood itself, and then along with the complications that arise from replacing the water main, doing the sanitary sewers, repairs, lining, those types of items. In this particular one, we also threw a bridge in there also to put part of the project costs. We typically use TKDA for our bridge work and inspection stuff, but since SEH was doing the neighborhood, that we had SEH and their structural engineers design the bridge on it. When you looked at like the country club, for instance, that was a huge project over 2 years, required just dedicated staff to it, dedicated consultant staff to that project. It took up a lot of my time and my assistant's time at the time itself to go through that project. Our other staff doing the 3 projects would not have had that time to dedicate towards the project and make sure that everything was done correctly. So it's more of a technical aspect and then a construction management aspect of it that goes with it. And so we have to look at both of those elements to make sure that we're covered well. And you know, our intent is to give a real high level of service to all our projects. And on these that have a lot of things going on, we want to make sure that we are given that high level of service. And so that's why we consult out in a lot of cases.
The follow-up to that, though, Director Houle, is that for the 3 or 4 projects a year that we handle internally in engineering, those projects are also charged an engineering cost, correct?
They are. And that in the past, about 3 years ago or so, we used to use a straight percentage on those projects, and then we had a neighborhood that challenged us on it, and our attorney's office said we should be going to a direct charge on it. And so on those projects we've gone to a direct charge. We're still working through the kinks internally to be sure that we're charging for everything on those projects.
Yeah, but we charge, but I think one of the questions that a neighbor asked is, you know, they thought maybe they were paying in their taxes for other neighborhoods to have the work done where they had to pay externally to another engineering firm, and that's not the case.
That's correct, yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Continue, thank you.
Yep. And then in terms of warranty claims, tell me about the process. I know that's not part of this particular document, but it's come up numerous times. People want to make sure that, well, for one thing, help us understand what the process is time-wise and who calls whom and how it's communicated. And then if you can comment specifically, there was some pictures from a resident's property, one regarding a tree and a lift. I'd like to hear your opinion on that as well.
As far as the warranties goes, is that we have assigned people, and in this case the consultant that's assigned to the project, and the homeowners are to call those folks, or so they can call our engineering department and register an issue that they might have with their property, and we can look into it as far as warranties goes. And then what we do is we we assign either a staff person or else refer it back to the consultant that did the project. They'll take a look at the warranty item, bring it up with the contractor, and then during the warranty period, typically towards the end of the warranty period, is that they will come out and replace or fix whatever the issue is. So if it's a cracked apron, sidewalk, driveway, or something like that, is that they'll come in more than likely next spring and repair that. And typically we have on this one, I think it was a 1-year warranty period on that. We've since gone to 2-year warranties. So the ones that are being constructed this last summer are 2-year warranties. Those were at the tail end of the 1-year warranty on the projects.
1-year warranty for concrete work, and then for sod, it's a few months.
Yeah, sod is only 42 days on the sod, and we're looking on actually of not using sod on future projects is actually going to a hydro seed. We're doing that did it on 44th Street. We're doing it on Tracy Avenue. West 70th Street, we came back and we hydro seeded where the sod didn't take over the summer. So
on the warranty claims, we don't send out notice to the neighborhood and say your warranty period's coming up. Please call this number to organize the claims. It just is strictly randomly by complaint.
Typically, the communications we actually do send out communications to the neighbors and ask them that. Yeah, we're wrapping up, finalizing the project, and if you have any issues, is to contact the project inspector.
That's what I wanted to know. Okay, and then in terms of the two specific claims that have been made, I don't know if you received that or not. One was about a tree.
Here.
And the other one was about a driveway. And on the tree claim, the person, if this is true, said, the person evaluating said the tree's not dead because it still has leaves on it. I guess I'd want someone to do more of a technical evaluation of that to vet the claim.
We will. I'll have our city forester take a look at that, and we'll get back to this individual as far as the tree goes. What we saw this coming into this fall on a lot of projects that we did the last couple of years is the trees dropped their leaves earlier. They went dry with the drought that we had. So we're watching a number of trees on projects that we did in the last few years. As far as the driveway goes, I'm not sure if Paul Pascal with SCH is aware of this one. I'd have to actually go out and do a little bit more investigation on that. Yep.
Yeah, the thing just, that was a comment in here, if it's accurate, was that someone said the resident needed a video, and that to me is not the correct standard.
No.
No one's going to be out videoing this stuff. So I just want to make sure that that's addressed and we handle this in a reasonable fashion.
Yeah, we'll take. Are you familiar with that one? Do you want to comment on it? Sure.
Paul Pasco with SEH's Minnetonka office, 10901 Red Circle Drive, Minnetonka. With regards to the driveway, that is Jim Grotz's driveway at 5513 Park Place. And I'm just reading, left with a driveway that slopes to the garage. And the driveway does slope to the street. I talked to our inspector about this today, and we just disagree with what this property owner is saying regarding that driveway slope. Regarding the stairs, I'm going to have to check back with my inspector on the stairs. That one I'm not entirely familiar with.
But back to the earlier point, we don't require a video to lodge a claim, correct?
No.
Okay. Thank you.
What we'll do this on this Councilmember Spraying Council is that we'll look into that, and we'll correspond with this resident, and we'll copy you folks on that correspondence. So
Appreciate
you don't have
that.
to follow it up on it.
I just want to know that if we do a job that's this large, that we don't leave someone worse off than when they started.
Yeah. Thank you.
I think
Right,
that's
yep.
our goal here.
Yep.
And that's and that they be treated courteously.
But regarding driveways, when I first started, when we did projects, we would take out the aprons and leave a pretty steep slope on the driveway.
You don't do that anymore.
We started out, we will sometimes, in some cases, go all the way back to the garage.
Yeah.
Because our goal is that we want to to be in the shape that if we lived there, that we would be comfortable with it.
I think the only other issue that we got something on that I got was maybe a change of water in a house from the Weigels on 5501 Oak Lawn.
Yes, that one, I believe we had a letter that was in the packet, in the report that addressed that issue.
Dated October 5th.
Yes.
I have a copy if you would like it, Director Hull. Here. It's easier.
What we responded back on this particular issue was that is in the packet there should be a letter dated October 11th from SEH that addressed their issues of was there a design flaw in the Minnehaha Woods Neighborhood Roadway Improvement Project causing their basement to flood? Was no. What essentially what it was is that the project is that there was not enough soils that was changed out in the roadway to change the geology, that the water would follow different paths through the area itself. So there was a water issue, and they were basically been lucky that they didn't have seepage in their basement over the years, and I don't know if it's coincidental or what, but there was no additional water added to the subsurface basically to cause flooding in the roadway. You got to keep in mind that the houses are 15 to 30 feet back, depending if they're a side yard or a front yard back from the roadway itself. So how does the water get from the roadway into the basements itself? Now I don't know where it actually came into the house because their email letter did not describe that. If it came through a water service, in some cases when people are changing out their water services, they have to have that sealed up because a lot of times water will follow the pipes, come up to the basement, and then seep into the basement itself. So it sounded like they actually had their basement waterproof, so I would assume that the waterproofers took care of that if that was an issue on that one. But we don't, after reviewing it, don't see where the project or the contractor would have caused something to occur to the home.
I have a... Okay, can I go? All right, I'll just go quick and then you can...
Go ahead, Member Brindle, go ahead.
Regarding the bridge, is that part of what's being assessed in this project? I want to make sure that that's clear that it is or is not being assessed.
It is not being assessed. It comes out of our stormwater fund.
Okay, thanks.
Member Bennett.
To follow up on several questions that other members have had, but the most recent one being the water, I did see in materials that a resident sent us attached to his correspondence the notices that had been sent by the city about different meetings. And one of them called, I think it was the first project communication, that first email, called people's attention to a service that they could have an inspection of their property, because one of the pieces of correspondence raised the possibility that this water issue may be arising because of cracks in the foundation. Would that be the type of thing that would have been discerned with a before and after inspection? And what is the possibility for that now? And that might, Member Sprague, have related to the person who told you about videotaping. So it's my understanding, again, Director Houle, that there was this opportunity for people to have their properties inspected at the start of the project?
Right. There was on that. Maybe Paul can cover if this particular home inspected. Do you know? We'd have to go back and look at it. We'll go back and make sure that if it was inspected, that we put the inspection company in touch with these folks.
Sure. More general question, do we know about how many of the, I think I count up 194 properties that were involved in the project, because 191 at 1 REUs and 3 at 0.33 REUs. So I guess that adds to 194. Of those 194 properties, do we know approximately how many homeowners availed themselves of this service before the project started?
I believe it was around 65%.
More.
That's going from memory.
Okay. And do we know about how many have requested follow-up inspections? Do we have that information?
I'd be guessing. We do have it, but it's not in my head right now.
That would be helpful to know just going forward.
Sure.
So again, if this homeowner did have that pre-inspection done, then there would be that information available. Okay, then with respect to the tree, I have, with my special assessment information, a discussion that we had in 2010 on penalties for tree damage on special assessment roadway projects. And so is that policy that we were discussing at that meeting in 2010, is that policy still in effect?
It is. That policy is part of our specifications that we put out in the project. So if there was any visual damage to the tree, is that they would be penalized on it. So if they hit a big root structure or hit a branch, that it would be that the contractor would be penalized, and that those dollars that were claimed or gathered from the penalized dollars would actually go to that homeowner. So
rather than into the fund. Yes, I remember that discussion. We felt that it was much more fair that the money went directly to the homeowner than to be shared among the assessment area. Now, with respect to damage that may not be visible, so you're talking about visual damage, but we do know that sometimes something can suffer damage and it's something that takes place. It may not be apparent till the next growing season. Is that next growing season within the warranty period, and is there any recourse for the homeowner should the damage to the tree be more visible in the spring than now with leaves falling?
I would say that, no, it's not covered in the warranty period for a contractor. They don't warranty existing conditions like that over time. What I would say is that if it does die, is that we take a look at it and try to pinpoint the best we can as far as what caused the death of the tree or the decline of the tree. And it could be a disease, that was pre-existing. A lot of our projects, we have the city forester go through and inspect all the projects, and a lot of times if he sees the distressed tree, he'll send out a letter to the homeowner before our contractors get there. It could have been a drought conditions like we've been having here. Could have been something from the construction. A lot of times you don't know. In some cases where we've had trees die, we've actually split the cost with the homeowners, not knowing what to take it down and coordinate replanting in some cases. But we'll definitely, our goal is to make sure that our vegetation stays intact and that we don't kill off trees and things. So we're curious too if a tree does die on a project, why did that tree die on a project a year or 2 years later?
I heartily support the statement that Member Swenson made about with a project of this magnitude and the cost to residents, it's really desirable. I think it's everyone's goal that people be at least, or better than they were before the project started. So I would hope that people who do have warranty concerns are able to have them satisfied. With respect, there was some discussion or some question raised in the correspondence about the public purpose of the sewer replacement, whether it was done by relining or the trenched version. And I would like to ask you specifically about inflow and infiltration, I&I, and the public part of that, the public impact of it, the public cost of it, because there was some reference again made to it in the correspondence, but I'm not sure that there's clear understanding of what that is, why that is a problem, and why we as a city do need to do something about it, why there's again a cost to it.
Yep. What Councilmember Bennett is referring to is I&I, which is inflow and infiltration in the system, which is essentially in a sanitary sewer system. It's groundwater coming into our system and going off to through our trunk lines, and then goes over to the Met Council. And as it leaves the city, it's metered. So we're basically paying to treat clear water in the system. So our goal is to reduce the I&I that we have in our system. We've done a really good job of updating our sanitary sewer lines as we go through projects. We're relining the lines with plastic liners, tightening up the system, the public system itself. So we have no issue with going forward, improving the public system. The private system, which is the sewer services, are the ones that are basically the biggest culprit right now as far as I&I into the system. And the reason being is on a private service, on a city of this age, is that you have a clay pipe, which is typically about 1.5 foot sections to 3 foot sections in some cases, but you have a joint at each section that is separated over time or has opened up, and if you have groundwater conditions, higher groundwater conditions, it has a place for the roots to go into and the groundwater to go into. So when we were doing these 3 projects, Country Club project, Minnehaha Woods, Richmond Hills, next year will be Normandale's, is we're encouraging people to upgrade the lines. The first goal is that we want to make sure that everything within the right-of-way has been upgraded so that we're good to go for another 50, 80 years within the right-of-way itself as far as utilities. So from right-of-way to right-of-way line, we want the services upgraded, including the water service and the sanitary sewer service. What we're also encouraging people to do is upgrade their line all the way to their house so we can attack this I&I issue. And that goes citywide, basically, and it affects your rates, your sewer rates in the future as far as increasing them, because at the Met Council, we're seeing increases over the years as treating water. We also have in the past been identified to receive penalties from the Met Council, about $113,000, $120,000 a year of penalties because of us being a wet city. They have not penalized any municipalities yet, because what their goal is to actually work with the municipalities to be sure that they're improving their system to get that I&I out of the system rather than penalizing them. So we've done enough. If you can show that you've done enough work over that $113,000, you're kind of forgiven on the penalty at this point. So we have no issue with getting up to that amount for what we're spending in the sanitary sewer fund of meeting that $113,000. But on the lateral services, it's still an issue, and it will be an issue until the majority of them are replaced, reducing that down.
And to put those numbers into some perspective, with a general fund of around $30 million, that $113,000 would be just a little over a third of 1%. Represented in a levy. And so it sounds like there are 2 ways that controlling or reducing I&I has a public benefit. One is that it exempts us from penalties that the Met Council has not yet imposed, but is warning that it may impose in the future. And the second is that it keeps stormwater utility rates lower, which are borne by the taxpayers of this city, or the utility rate payers of this city.
Right.
Am I correct? Yep. And then it sounds like there's a second distinct benefit or public benefit to the replacement of these lines, at least back to what would be the curb stop or the right-of-way line, understanding that sewer doesn't have a curb stop. And that is that if there's failure of that connection or that line after that roadway has been reconstructed, then it's digging up a reconstructed roadway. Is that correct?
That's right. And in some cases, you'll have a house tear down, rebuild, in which in some cases they might have to go out to the main line to upgrade their water service or whatever. We're hoping that doesn't occur. But if they do go into the roadway, is that we require them to replace the pavement all the way from curb to curb, and then what we call a socket to socket line, because we're saw and sealing our roadways now. So it's essentially about a 20 by 27 foot piece of pavement that they're going to have to replace. So we're hoping that people will really think twice about going out into the roadway after it's been reconstructed. And one of the reason why we're doing that is because everybody up and down the block is paying a special assessment on that roadway, so they own a piece of that roadway, and we don't want people to go in and disturb what they basically own.
So that repavement, again, is at developer cost, not at public cost.
Absolutely,
correct?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay, just a couple more questions, if I may. It appears from just the properties that had assessment agreements, understanding it's a substantial number, but it's not the whole project, that there were households which had more extensive work performed. In other words, not only the replacement to the right-of-way line of the sanitary sewer service line, but all the way back to the house. And in the assessment agreements, I think I noted 13 that had their water lines replaced as well. Do we know the numbers? And I guess I saw a relationship between the higher cost and the extensiveness of the work. But I can't know what I don't know. So for people who didn't put their charges onto an assessment agreement, I can't know if they had that same magnitude of work done. And I guess that's one of my just observations. It's obvious that that there was a lot of money spent on upgrades, but it's also very difficult to tell what relative value. It sounds like some people had much more extensive work done than others.
Yep. The numbers that we did pull regarding what people had done was about 27% of the people, property owners, actually went from the main line to the right-of-way line. And then 72% of them either went all the way up to their house or had previously had their lines redone before we got there. So we do know that on the sanitary side. I don't believe that we pulled the numbers on the water service side, but that would be an interesting one in the future, or even on this one, to go back and look at those numbers, because we don't have the dollar amounts for those improvements, but we do have permits, because they had to pull a permit with the building department to do that. So we could go back and look at what the extent of the work was done, just out of curiosity, I guess, for future projects.
Well, I think so that we all learn as much as we can from this, because it's obvious that the residents, the property owners, have spent a lot of time studying this, analyzing it, providing us with information. Staff has spent a lot of time on this. SEH has spent a lot of time on this. It'd be useful, I think, if we can learn all of what we can from it. So if that kind of information can be pulled together, it would be very helpful to see.
Sure.
I think. And then my last question, and this is a more general question. There were several calls and correspondence for adjustments. And if special assessments are adjusted, how does that money get paid?
That would be that's a really good question. Is if you do adjustments, it would either have to come out of one of the utility funds, if it's warranted to come out of the utility funds, or else it'd have to come out of our general fund. Or construction fund, if you're making adjustments on a project like this. I don't know if I answered what you were asking.
Well, I guess and it's my understanding that somehow that cost gets borne. It either gets borne by utility customers citywide in terms of rates, or it gets borne by taxpayers if it's general fund.
That's right. Yeah.
And just a rough number, and again, not knowing what the magnitude of work done on individual properties, but at least one correspondent asked for $1,500 per REU or per property adjustment, and that times 192 is $288,000, which again, with reference to magnitude in the general fund, would be about 1% of our general fund.
Right. Yeah.
Thank you.
Member Brindle.
Just a couple of questions. This assessment would become payable or start to be payable next spring?
Yes, if you approve the assessments tonight, they would be certified at the end of the month, actually November 30th, I believe, and then the first payable would be next spring if they let them go to be paid with your taxes.
Okay. Yeah. So we have 10 assessment agreements that are unsigned. How long do people have to sign those? What's the deadline?
Well, on the 10 assessment agreements, what we did was we pulled those dollar amounts out of the assessment roll, and we sent them notices that basically an invoice that they need to either write out to the city a check for that amount, or else they could sign their agreement, and we could get it in at the next couple meetings in November here and add it to their assessment roll. So
that's something that we would have to act upon.
Right. That's at either the next two meetings. If they do get them in, then we can add it to the assessment roll.
So that would be a follow-on for this project at a later meeting.
Right. Yes.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Other questions from council members? I've got a few here, just so I understand this a little bit better. We had this discussion last time, and I want to continue it a bit. So when you first thought about the cost of the sanitary sewer system upgrades, you had an estimate of two different types of service replacements. I'm looking at your memo correctly, and out of that assessment or that analysis of there being two different types of service replacement, you ended up with an average cost per service of about $4,500. And that was the number that you gave to the residents.
Right, yeah. That was given at the project hearing.
Right. And then, subsequent to that time that you gave that number to the residents, you revised your estimates of what was going to be required so that there were three different types of replacement, and the average cost per service there dropped to $2,500 when you were estimating that. Isn't that correct?
Yeah, the actual cost was $2,500, and then when we calculated in engineering and cost of borrowing, it comes up almost $3,500.
But do you have a cost of engineering in the 1682?
We do not, and that's
Right.
and we
So
should.
I just want to compare apples
Yep.
to apples. So at one point in time, you felt comfortable enough with the estimates that were going on to tell people you thought it might cost $4,500. And then you came back and looked at it again and you revised it to three different types of replacement possibilities for the sanitary sewer system upgrades. And you came up with a cost of $2,500. But that estimate, even though it was kind of done the same way, was never conveyed to the residents. And so I know that you're saying, yeah, we got to do this a different way in the future. And you're saying that the reason it wasn't communicated to the residents was because the final costs per service is dependent on the final ratio of the three types of replacement methods. But you felt comfortable enough to give them the first number. To me, you should have felt comfortable enough to give them the second number, which was also a guesstimate. I mean, they're both guesstimates. So my thought is, why wouldn't you have given them the second number? Or in the future, why don't we make the main line to the right-of-way line part of the preliminary estimate or part of the project, and just not get ourselves into this problem where people have expectations based on an estimate that's made in good faith by you. There's another number that you also prepare in good faith that doesn't get passed on to them. They rely on the first number, and the final number paid by 12 people in the 12 units is $1,682. So I mean, if you'd have given them the second number, the differential would have only been $824, and it wouldn't have looked so disparate, so broad. And you know, I don't know really how to deal with this problem other than try to fix it in the future so that this doesn't happen somewhere else. Member Swenson, maybe you want to comment.
Can I respond back a little? I think there's a lot of lessons learned as you do these projects. You know, if you go back 10 years of how we're doing projects, even communicating to the public, it's really changed up over the years. On this particular one, the reason we give them a $4,500 is it's at the project hearing, and by state law, we have to give the methodology of how we're doing the assessments at the project hearing, I believe. So that's why we give the $4,500 of how identify what it potentially could be, just like the other dollar amounts that we had, the $11,800 that we had for the pending assessment. So that was the reason why the first number. The second number wasn't communicated out because of the ratios, but not only because of the ratios, is when we did the country club project, where we had over double the amount of properties, is that we never shared that number too, because it was dependent on the ratios there also, and that was no issue with that neighborhood. So, being very similar neighborhoods, we thought, well, do we give these numbers out or not give the numbers out? We did it on Richmond Hills. We gave out the numbers, and now it'll be interesting to see how that one shakes out, because the numbers that we gave out are probably going to be low per some of the deep services that we're repairing on that particular project. So it was, if you give a number out, you probably are going to hit it too low, potentially, or it's not going to be the correct number. So I guess in the future, either we'll actually on December 11th, I believe, is when we have our project hearings for next year projects. We'll have a proposal for you for how to go forward in the future.
Well, I think we've had a pattern of reacting to numbers for Director Houle that, he gives us an estimate for the streets and he gives the neighbors an estimate for streets, and we're always relieved when they come in lower. He gave an estimate to a neighborhood last winter, and prior to that, he'd given an estimate, and it came in much higher. And we kind of got all in a bundle over that, because you can't, it's so difficult to estimate low and then tell them, no, it's really this number. So, the message that we tend to give you, to be honest, in the 8 years I've been sitting up here, is estimate high, come in low. Now, that's on the Full Street project, but it's also similar in just repairing these parts, too.
Yep, so
I don't see that we've treated this neighborhood actually any differently than we treated the other two neighborhoods that we've had with this. Is it a way maybe that's worked? It worked okay until this neighborhood, and then it really hasn't worked. So I think that told us that we have to change, and I think that's what I hear you saying.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, that's what I hear you saying too, and I'm just looking to you for some ideas about how we avoid this problem in the future. Because I still understand that the preliminary estimate for the whole project per REU was 11,800, and we're coming in at 10,363, so it's lower overall than we anticipated. But it goes back to that whole notion of making a representation that people rely on, and then it turns out that they could have saved money if they would have waited. And of course, we didn't know that at the time, but there were steps along the way where we could have made the same sort of representations to them that we made the first time. Oh, we think we think the number is potentially coming down, and there would have been time for a lot of them to make some changes. So, I mean, even if the differential was $825, it's still a big problem in the scope of things, because at 192 REUs, it's it's about $150,000. So.
I think too, if you look at on page 3 of 3, the hypothetical, that could have happened also. And those numbers, if we would have given the 3,500, it could have came in at 5,200 potentially if we would have caught the engineering on it. So it's not the greatest process to go up the way we did it, and I think that we're going to learn from that, and you'll see a revised version coming up in December.
That's why I'm wondering if one solution might be to just make the sewer enhancement project part of the overall project, and just say we're taking it from the main line to the right-of-way line, and if you want to take it from the right-of-way to your house, that's your business. We'd encourage you to do it, but this is going to be part of the project.
We'll look at the cost of that and see if you're comfortable with raising the sewer rates to do that. So we'll have to look at that to see what it is. But
are you saying that we would do that as part of our sewer and water bill, or are you saying that we would do it and it would be part of their street assessment? Because there's two different things, and what I heard manager or Director Hool say is he assumed you're saying that the cost is going to be part of the street, the
yeah,
curb.
that's a good point.
And
that's a good point. Okay. All right. We'll just wait to hear your ideas.
Yep, that'd be great.
Okay. All right.
If I may, Your Honor.
Yep. Member Bennett.
And we have studied that issue in part. We studied what it would do to the utility fund to look at it back to the house. I think that question of what it does to utility rates or special assessments to fold it into the project if it's back to the right-of-way line, I really would appreciate a look at that. And again, what we can learn from this. One last thing I recall seeing in the correspondence is this question about the city's land. And I know that the city owns some land, it's open space land, and there was some question about whether or not that wouldn't be REUs that could be charged. It's my understanding, Director Hool, that when the city in 2005, was it, or 6, moved from a policy where front yard footage, where assessments were determined on front yard footage, to a determination of assessments based on residential equivalency unit, that formula turns on trips generated. Am I correct?
That's right. Yep.
Well, but really trips generated. That's the differentiation that's made in different types of property. That's why a twin home is not assessed as a full REU. That's why a condo is not. So based on that, it would appear that if there is no park use, no scheduled use, it's not trips being generated by that space, it's footage. And so the same principle is applying to the city land that's also applying to residents' private property.
What we do on public property, and even school district property is that we look at, one is what trips are generated out of the property if there's activities planned. So we work the park department to see what activities are and we kind of calculate how many trips per activity are and then spread it out over the year and see if we can't come to an REU assumption on it. Or else we look, and then we also look at what the buildable lots would be on that property if that was not a public land. And then we take the higher amount, the higher REU and assign it to that property. On this one here, I don't believe that the property that we're talking about had any buildable lots on it that we could assign a REU to it.
So the evaluation of this property then was 0 and 0?
Right.
Zero
correct.
trips generated, 0 buildable lots?
That's correct, yes.
Thank you.
I got a couple other questions that are more specific in nature. They're precipitated by the letter we got from Mr. Crabtree. He was wondering on the engineering cost category now, Director Hull, you've already made it clear with Member Brindle that the costs, there are no engineering costs related to the bridge work included in the special assessment to the neighborhood.
That's correct, yes.
And then the other question was, are there costs related to curb and gutter that are engineering related that would have been a part of the special assessment?
No, those costs go to the storm sewer fund or out of the storm sewer fund.
And then it was, the other point he raised was there any cost arising because of the city drawings not being accurate at the start of the project that would have been assessed in part to the neighborhood for correcting those drawings?
No, the as-built drawings that we originally go off of is just a starting point for the neighborhood, and then they go out and do a full topographic survey of the neighborhood, and that's when they dial in what's actually out there is off of those topos. So our as-builts that we're refining as we go through the system wouldn't cost them any more than any other neighborhood.
All right, and then there was a question about the quality of the dirt that was used.
I'm going to refer that to Paul Pasco.
Space, for the space behind the new curbs that was filled in with black dirt.
Sure. The city follows MnDOT specification on topsoil borrow, and all of the tests that we ran on all of the samples that we had, it satisfied specification. So the question of bad dirt out there, it's not inferior dirt. It meets the specification that the city follows.
Okay. And then there was another question from Mr. Crabtree about, or a concern, I guess, about poor workmanship and supervision of workmanship. And that is, he said that he's got a chip in the slab at 5408 Oak Lawn. Chip in the slab remains as a testament to the poor workmanship of the contractor. Your comments on that, Mr. Pasco?
Sure. In our opinion, watching Paulda go and do the work, they were following normal quality and care. In the case of this particular property, we saw instances where the property owner was out with a pickaxe picking along that edge of the concrete driveway. So it's difficult to know, was the damage caused by Paulda, was the damage caused by the property owner? But the fact remains that there's a chip from somewhere, and if it's something that absolutely has to get taken care of, there is warranty out there to correct such things.
We do also, because he was mentioned that it was a Hague driveway, which are typically more expensive than other driveways. But we typically offer the residents is that if they want an upgraded driveway, concrete like that, is that we would basically issue a check to Hague if they do the work at the cost of what our contractor would have bid the price, and then they would cover the difference in the price itself, so that they could get something that they actually wanted to get. So.
All I would ask is that on page 4, under paragraph 6 of Mr. Crabtree's letter, that you address all of those concerns that he raised for himself and others in the neighborhood, so that they're satisfactorily taken care of. We're in the service business, and I think it's important that we service well our customers, especially when we're assessing them a significant amount of money or potentially assessing them a significant amount of money for a new roadway. All right, anybody else have any questions? Do we have a motion on this matter?
I'll move it.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we adopt the roadway improvements set forth in BA 334. And we're going to, any further discussion? We need a roll call on this.
Member Sprague?
Aye.
Member Swenson?
Aye.
Member Bennett?
Aye.
Member Brindle?
Aye.
Mayor Hovland?
Aye. All right, thank you, and thanks to the residents for all of the hard work they did on this and all the excellent information they provided. It's a bit frustrating, but thank you. All right, now we've got some work to do with Ellers. Director Wallen going to take this matter, or Manager
We do.
Neal, are you going to handle it?
We had a bond sale earlier today. These were bonds that the council had authorized for sale at our previous council meeting on October 2nd. The bond sale was conducted by Ellers, who represents our city as our financial advisor, and I know you've met Mark Ruff before, and we'll introduce John and Mark, and they'll give us a summary of how that sale went today, and then we'll ask you for your approval of the plan. Mr. Wallen.
2012A is a utility street reconstruction and refunding of a previous street reconstruction issue. Series 2B is a taxable issue for a certain amount of work done at the Braemar Arena, and related to that is 2012C, which is the tax-exempt portion of that. The bonds were bid out today, and I'd like to introduce Mark Ruff from Ellers to give the results of the bond bids.
Thank you, Director Wallen. Mr. Ruff, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. I did hand out 3 packets this evening. I'll quickly review the information in each. The 2012A bonds, we did receive 6 bids. The winning bidder was Piper Jaffray out of Minneapolis. When we adjusted their bid, because they did have a fairly high premium where they give us more money than the par amount of bonds, and so we reduced down the size of the issue, the adjusted true interest cost was a 1.6311%. That is over a 0.5% lower than what we had projected. So we had a bit of a cushion, about a 0.25% cushion in the bonds when we first called for the sale, but we're certainly very happy with the results. These bonds do go out to 2029, but the majority of them is really paid off within 10 years. It's a very front-end loaded debt service. There is, as Director Wallen mentioned, there were several purposes to this bond issue. One of the purposes was a refunding to refinance some existing bonds that were issued back in 2007. I'm happy to say that the savings in today's dollars on that refunding also was much higher than expected. We came in at just under $380,000 of savings for that particular bond issue. There are a number of special assessment projects that are financed with this bond issue as well. You have a policy now of 15 years and 1% over the cost of borrowing, remembering that, as I said, this bond issue was largely shorter in term, but when we isolate just the special assessment portion, that came out to be a 2.25% interest rate, so 1% over that turns out to be 3.25%. On the subsequent pages of the packet is listed the bidders after Piper Jaffray includes UBS, RBC Capital Markets, PNC out of Pennsylvania, Baird out of Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and then Hut Shockey out of Chicago. So always good to see a broad turnout from across the country. The sources and uses of the bonds and the projects as a whole as listed on page 6. The bond issue itself is listed on page 7. The savings in detail, remembering that we did put some cash into this as well, is on page 8. And then pages 9 through 14 are the breakout of the different purposes, including utilities, stormwater, street, water, and sewer, sanitary sewer. So that is that particular bond issue. Mr. Mayor, would you like me to go over all three purposes first, or do you want to address these one at a time?
I think as a predicate to this discussion, it would have been good to have you provide us and I think our residents with the information as to the review by the bond rating agencies and the renewal of our AAA bond rating by both Standard & Poor's and Moody's, which I think everybody ought to be proud of.
If you would allow me, then I'll go on to the Series B packet, because just out of pure bulk, I included the copies of the Standard & Poor's and the Moody's report in the Series B packet, so thank you for that, that reminder. On pages of the Series B packet, on page 7 is a copy of the Moody's report, and then following that on page 11 starts the Standard & Poor's report. Number one, just a reminder for the audience, it's very unusual for a city to have both a Standard & Poor's and a Moody's AAA rating. If you believe that those ratings are once given, always given, that would be a mistake. There are, just even in the last couple of months, 2 Minnesota suburban communities who have been placed on negative watch, who previously were AAA communities. That is largely related to property value declines in those particular communities, and also concern over some enterprise fund losses in one of those communities as well. That's not a downgrade, but it is an enterprise. It is a negative watch, which means within the next 2 years those could be downgraded, and that does have an effect on even a negative watch has an effect on interest rates, because the market's starting to wonder what that means. I would say that, in my personal opinion, Edina is solidly in a AAA category. The rating agency reports do highlight some specific discussions of that. Number one is, even though your tax base has declined slightly, it's much lower than other communities. You have a good diversity of users within your tax base, and more importantly, you're reinvesting in your tax base. And the actions taken by the council with Southdale were certainly highlighted within both of the reports. Two is, overall, your enterprise funds are very well run. And where you have had some lower than expected cash flows, the city clearly has plans in place to deal with those, and the rating agency appreciates the fact that you've thought about those, that you're monitoring them closely, and you're taking actions to correct that. The last thing I will say is one of the most important factors in a rating is management, and the fact that you budget conservatively, that you add to your general fund balance, that you consistently are trying to find ways of doing things better as a community matters to rating agencies. And I would certainly compliment your staff. We were well prepared for the rating agency questions. We had your new economic development manager, Bill, on the phone, as well as Susie Miller from Braemar, because these bond issues involve recreation facilities. And obviously, Mr. Neal and Mr. Wallen, very important part of those discussions, and they really handled themselves flawlessly. I think you ought to be proud of the work that they do and the image that they portray with the rating agencies. So, Mayor, you're absolutely right. The ratings make a big difference in what kind of bond rates that you get, and I would certainly recommend that you distribute these reports, because I think they speak very well of the city of Edina.
With respect to that true interest costs at 1.6311%, how does that compare to other rates that you've been seeing in comparable cities?
It's always tough to say exactly what a good rating means for you, but I put the range somewhere upwards to 0.25% better. It depends on the day, and it depends on the kind of bond issue that we're talking about, but it has some measurable impact. And the fact that even on these two smaller bond issues, you had 5 and 6 bids. Normally on smaller bond issues less than $1 million, we see 2 or 3 bids. So the fact that people are willing to take the time to actually to respond to you is also indicative that they have customers who want to buy your bonds.
Mm-hmm. Member Swenson.
The last time we went up, right after I think our state was shut down, there were some comments by the bond raters as to what was happening at the state level and would that potentially ever affect us, and they indicated that it could. Was there any discussion like that this time around?
Actually, it was remarkably silent on the state's condition. There was a reminder, though, that the federal government also was downgraded, and maybe again. Standard & Poor's, has made the statement definitively that even though we don't have a AAA Standard & Poor's country rating anymore, national government rating, that it's still possible for local governments to have that. They did caveat to say if there was a downgrade of the federal government again, that they may have to rethink that and wonder whether there'd be a universal downgrade of all state and local governments. So certainly what happens above us matters. And I think maybe the fact that the legislature is not in session and at least more recently some of that has stabilized in terms of at least the projections for the state. We'll have to just wait and see what happens next year.
Okay. No, I was just curious because I've been watching that for a couple of years after your remarks. Do you want a motion on that first series, the 2012A, before you go to this 2012B?
I think your city attorney is answering yes. So.
Okay, so moved.
Oh, it doesn't matter.
Oh, it doesn't matter? Oh, okay.
Well, we got a motion in a second, so why don't we deal with it? This is 2012-138.
And just a reminder, Mr. Mayor and members of the council, that, as I said, this issue was downsized from what was in your original packets. We are now at a par amount of $10,765,000.
Yep.
Thank you. All right, further discussion? All those in favor of adopting Resolution 2012-138, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Carried. All right, we're on to your choice on the next one.
So the 2012B were $815,000 of taxable general obligation bonds. The Series B and the Series C are really one and the same. They are to finance the improvements to the Braemar Arena. We broke them out into taxable and tax exempt just because the uses of those bond proceeds, part of them are for private activities. And so bond counsel advises to separate the issues. So we are amortizing or paying off the Series B, the taxable bonds, which are a little more expensive first. This has a term that goes through 2020. Again, even though they're taxable bonds, we had 6 bids. The winning bid out of United Bankers Bank in Bloomington, Minnesota, which is a correspondent bank. Will turn around and sell these to other banks across the state. Again, I apologize that we did not do a very good job on predicting interest rates. We had a 2.19% interest rate that came in at an adjusted bid of 1.27%. So the good news is in the right direction. We did adjust this bond down $5,000, so the par amount is $815,000, and both the cost of issuance and the underwriter's discount came in less than what had been budgeted. Again, the bidders, more local folks with this smaller bond issue, are listed on page 3 and 4, and the sources and uses and cash flows are listed on pages 5 and 6. But very happy with the overall bid.
All right. Questions for Mr. Ruff?
I do.
Member Brindle?
I just have a question comparing the information provided in 2012A and the information provided, I'm looking at page 2, where we're looking at the bond and the interest rate. And in the 2012A, there's a lot more detail about the savings. Well, that's because that's refunded. But for example, there's the assessment rate, there's the total project cost. I don't see that on the 2012B. Is that because it's a different kind of bond, or why is that information not there?
Sure. I think it's in a little bit different order. So on page 2 of the 2012B, we list the principal amount and then we show net proceeds. So because there was some cash involved under the 2012A, we refer to it as project costs. 2012B, it's referred to as net proceeds. It's really one and the same. Okay. Because there are no special assessments associated with the 2012B, it's just being paid from the revenues of those facilities. There was not an additional interest rate, so there isn't an assessment rate. And as you mentioned, there was no refunding component, so we did not include that. So all good questions, but I think it's just a different type of bond issue, basically.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Do we have a motion and
So moved. Second.
motion and second on B, 2012-139. Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed say nay. Carried.
The last issue is an adjusted amount of $2,100,000. These, again, are tax-exempt bonds for the recreation improvements. We did lower this bond issue by $5,000 from the original estimates. That was because the winning bidder, UBS, out of New York, one of 5 bidders, did, again, have a premium bond, and so that enabled us to reduce that size. The true interest cost, remember, this is a longer bond issue. It goes out 20 years. So the true interest cost in this particular case came in at a 2.5937, which was the adjusted interest rate. Again, 0.5% lower. I should mention that when we combine the B and C, what do these percentages all mean? What it really means in dollar and cents is for this project, your average debt service is going to be about $10,000 less than what had been projected per year. So obviously, any little bit helps toward the success of that cash flow and that project overall. So even for a smaller bond issue, you had some big names in the winning bid. It was J.P. Morgan, Citigroup. I can't tell you who Wiley Brothers exactly is in page 3, but they were with UBS, and the first runner-up there was RBC Capital Markets. Overall, again, a good day to sell bonds, and very happy with the results. The cash flows on page 6 combine both of those bond issues, so you can see the column on page 6 that refers to existing debt services, the Series B bonds combined then with the Series C bonds to give a level debt service over the life of the project. And certainly would recommend that you accept the bid of UBS Financial Services out of New York.
Second.
All right, discussion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say nay. Carried. Well, you're a bearer of very good news. When you have to borrow money and you can borrow it at the lowest rate possible, it makes us feel a little bit better. A lot better, as a matter of fact. So
It's almost free.
So, thank you very much for that excellent report.
You're very welcome, and congratulations. It really, what you do every day does matter, and it is watched by the markets, and so we certainly appreciate the opportunity to work with you.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you very much.
Next matter before us is second reading on Ordinance 2012-15, franchise ordinance involving CenterPoint Energy. And Director Wallen, you have this matter, or Manager Neal?
Well, I'll introduce it, and then we'll ask Director Wallen to just let you know about one change that's in this. You know, the timeline on this starts really earlier, much earlier this year, as we talked about how we could fund a priority of the council, which was pedestrian and cyclist facilities in the city. We do have a number of those facilities, but we've identified a number of gaps in the facilities, and the council was interested in filling those gaps. The franchise fee is a fee that could be a general revenue of the city, and the council's discussion to date has been to implement the new franchise fee and then dedicate those revenues specifically to the pedestrian and cyclist infrastructure improvements in the city. We have briefed both of the private utilities, Xcel Energy and CenterPoint Energy, on the proposed ordinances. We did that this summer. The statute that allows cities to impose franchise fees requires a 60-day gap between adoption of the first reading of the ordinance and the final ordinance. And so we had our first reading in August and scheduled that second reading for this evening. The ordinance is before the council in second reading. If you approve this ordinance tonight, the franchise fees will be imposed during the first quarter of 2013. And there is a change in the language for both ordinances, and I'll defer now to Director Wallen to tell us a little bit about that.
The changes to both ordinances are identical. Previously, Centerpoint had contacted us about changing what was to their ordinance subsection 8 on the surcharge, stating the City of Edina recognizes that the Minnesota Public Utilities Commission may allow the company to add a surcharge to customer rates of city residents to reimburse the city for the cost of the fee. That is something that it seems is out of direct reference to the Minnesota Public Utilities Commission and the allowance of that to charge a surcharge. Since I sent out the packet, Xcel Energy has also said that they wish to follow the same wording as CenterPoint Energy, and I would recommend changing their section 4 in ordinance for ordinance 2012-16 in the case of Xcel to include the same wording that had been changed for CenterPoint Energy.
In fact, I think what we learned is that it's a Department of Commerce direction to make these changes, so it's not discretionary and part of the council.
Just a point of clarification, John, I think if we play the tape back, I think we would hear you say to add a surcharge to customer rates of city residents to reimburse the city for the cost of the fee, and it's
To reimburse the company for the cost
company,
of the
exactly.
Yes. Okay,
Yep, I
yes.
just wanted to clarify that for folks at home
Okay,
who
yes.
are not looking at this.
That's correct. That's
Thanks.
correct.
I'd like a clarification too on this surcharge. Is it actually by that language creating the ability for the utility company to pass through the precise amount of the fee that we are charging them, or that they can actually surcharge the proposed fee per utility of $1.45 and amount over and above $1.45 to the customer as a surcharge? Because that, to me, what a surcharge would mean. Some charge over and above what we're charging them.
That's correct.
All right, so how do we know what that surcharge is going to be?
We don't know.
Okay.
And I don't believe, I don't know if Michelle is in testifying mode tonight, but we don't know that they actually impose that fee. They just want the ability to, they have won the ability to charge some very nominal fee to cover their administrative costs in imposing the fee.
Well, wouldn't that be important for us to know what the proposed surcharge fee would be? Because that's really the true cost. I mean, if you go to an ATM and you're going to take out $100, it tells you you're going to pay a surcharge fee of whatever the fee is, $2, $2.50, $3. I think we ought to know this.
So my
we act on
question,
it.
yes, and since so many other communities have already established this, are their agreements, do they read the same way? Or is this a change as of our agreement? And are we being held to a different standard?
Can I ask the city attorney to chime in on
As I read this language, this says utilities can go to the PUC, and this PUC, they can ask the PUC to approve it. So until they've done it, it isn't knowable.
I think that could be read either way. I think it's vague. I think there may be a regulation now that allows them to surcharge, or they may have to go and get a surcharge approved by the Minnesota PUC.
But if they took this out and the PUC says they can do it, it wouldn't need to even be in here.
Well, when they say cost of the fee, does cost mean the actual cost? The actual, that's nobody, in your experience approving these, does that mean?
Reimburse the company for the cost of the fee.
Yeah, cost.
So I don't want to give anyone any ideas, but for example, if the fee is $1 and it costs them 2 cents to collect it because of whatever reason.
Okay, so
Yeah,
it doesn't.
it'd be like that admin overhead that we have.
Yeah.
that we
In your
charge.
experience, seeing these approved, is it anything more than a nominal fee?
I don't believe so. I mean, that's my recollection, it's pretty nominal.
How about you, Manager Neal?
It's my recollection as well, because remember, I had a dialogue with one of you today about the fact that they collect the franchise fee revenue monthly, they disperse it to us quarterly. So there's a little bit of
They already have interest for.
there's a
They-
little bit.
They got to float.
Right. So they're really, they have to demonstrate to the PUC that they have actual defined costs that they can pass along. My recollection in talking to Mr. Norgren from CenterPoint Energy was that they don't do it. They just have the authority to if for some reason it becomes expensive for them to charge this fee.
We've got Ms. Swanson here from Excel. Maybe she can provide a little enlightenment. I've got another issue I want to raise with council anyway, so.
A little enlightenment.
Michelle Swanson with Excel Energy. I'm not speaking on behalf of CenterPoint Energy, but I'll give you some background information that I know. It was kind of late in the day when we found out this proposed change from CenterPoint. We had our legal department look at it, and they're like, yes, that was language recently that the Department of Commerce asked us to include in the standard fee ordinance. And our document that we started with you, as Mr. Neal had indicated several months ago, was earlier than when this language was dictated by the Department of Commerce. What I can tell you is that the fees that are listed in the fee ordinance are the fees that we will be collecting and giving back to the city. There will be no other fees collected above that. Traditionally, if you look in your franchise, when we begin to collect a fee from a community, there is a statement in the franchise that says, in lieu of permit fees. And so that's the trade-off. We have an administrative cost internally to administer this fee, but what we do is we say, in lieu of permit fees. So that is how we traditionally capture any administrative costs. The language that has just been kind of dictated by the Department of Commerce, I don't have enough background to tell you why that was added, but clearly this is an agreement between the city and between Excel, and I'm not a legal person, but I can't imagine we can unilaterally change something. I mean, we'd have to come back and agree to something. But traditionally, with all the other communities, it's in lieu of permit fees, and that's our administrative costs.
Thank you.
Okay, a question on this. If, in fact, a utility would choose to add a nominal surcharge, can we require them to tell us about it?
Oh, not only can we require them to tell us, but they have to go to the Minnesota Public Utilities Commission, and they have to file
Get it approved.
a
That's
case
what-
to get it approved.
That's what our attorneys tell me.
Right. So we would be we would be notified of that, and we would have the ability to contest it.
Sure, there'd be a hearing on it, and we'd be
Okay.
able to testify. Member
Great,
Bennett.
thank you.
Not to interfere with this continued line of questioning, if anyone has any questions on this, but I do have questions in terms of the application or the use of the fund, the rationale for the fund, if I may. Is that?
Sure, it's fine.
All right. And that is, Manager Neal, you spoke about safety, and I think that is a very significant thing in this community. We know that we are attractive to many people of all ages, and that walkability is something that is increasingly important. We also know that there are people who wish to commute and recreate in non-motorized vehicles at this point, usually bicycles. And we have not been able to, through our own sources of funding, keep up with that. Can you tell us what sources of funding we are using at this point, and why having an additional source of funding is so important?
Well, from some analysis from a couple of years ago, Wayne, how old is this information that I have?
Yep, that was a study done in 2003, updated in 2004.
Okay, so it identified at that time that we have between right around 100,000, between 110 and $50,000 a year in current spending for on sidewalks and trails. but that we had a defined need about that time of $928,000 a year for at least the next 6 years, and that number has grown since that time. It hasn't grown, of course, in the size of the network, but it has grown in terms of its cost. And that, at that point, was a number we were just looking at for kind of filling in the gaps in our system.
That was just sidewalks. It wasn't
Right.
lighting, that
Right.
wasn't bike trails. That was
Right.
strictly sidewalks.
And how is construction currently funded?
How construction is currently funded is through special assessments, through general fund dollars, and through capital dollars from our CIP. So we do not have a defined, identified, kind of dedicated revenue source for this expense.
So pertinent to some discussion earlier this evening, although the projects that we had before us this evening did not involve sidewalks, we have in fact included streetlights and sidewalks in assessment, and it is another way to make that cost a more general cost across the
Yes.
city rather than assessing to particular homeowners.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Okay. That complete your inquiries?
For now, thank you.
Okay, all right. One of the issues that's come up over the past month or so, and I think some of us have had this same conversation with residents, and that is with respect to a proposed franchise fee. They fear that it's something that will have an infinite life expectancy and that the rate will change over time. And so one of the issues I wanted to raise with my fellow colleagues was whether or not there would be an inclination to fix the rate at $1.45 per month per utility, and then as part of the ordinance, agree to sunset it at a date certain, and then some subsequent council can make a decision on whether to continue it or not. So the question would be whether or not, for example, we agree to a sunset provision that would sunset this in 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, but fix the rate at $1.45 for that period of time.
Your Honor and members of the council, the franchise fee rate is fixed for residential customers at $1.45 per customer. And it's not a variable rate. It doesn't vary with consumption. It's fixed, and it's in our ordinance. It's fixed until the council chooses to pass another ordinance to increase it.
So it's $1.45 per month per utility per meter, I guess.
Per meter. There are, I think, in all fairness, we should indicate that there are additional classifications of customers in both utilities, and gas and electric. The next classification up, the fee is $2.90. The next is $9, and the largest is $40. Way over 95% of our customers are residential customers, so that's who's impacted by the $1.45. Right.
Mayor, do I hear you asking for a commitment not to change it for 4 or 5 years?
No, with that explanation, I understand that on the fixing of the rate, any subsequent council could decide to change the rate, but I do think it might be worthwhile looking at a sunset provision, understanding that any subsequent council could change that as well. But I think at least as far as this initial action is concerned, might be something for us to just talk about a little bit.
We could, though the last time we did that, and this is an odd thing, but I'll bring it up. We did that for council salaries but what happens, but my example is not what happened to our salaries, because they haven't changed for a number of years. But once you put that sunset clause in, then you go through this whole process again. I'm not opposed to reviewing it in X number of years or telling whoever is on the council at that time, because it very easily could not be me or any of us, that it needs to be reviewed. But once you put a sunset clause where it stops, it's really difficult to get the right review going again on it. So I would like maybe a review without necessarily the cliff. Is that possible to do, Manager Neal?
Councilmember Swenson and members of the council, yes. I would foresee, we've had some discussion internally about how we would structure this, and we would structure it as a special revenue fund. So you would see a report, and at budget time you would see our forecast, and you would see a proposed budget for it. So it would be a matter of discussion, just like any other revenue source in our city budget is a matter of discussion for you.
Part of this fund is a cost allocation out of special assessments. So why would we sunset a cost reduction measure for our residents on that side of things? And the other thing is, for planning purposes, I think 5 years would be so arbitrary. We're so far behind on this infrastructure already, and I don't really see us running out of projects in the near future. The whole point of this is to guarantee a funding source to start to chip away at this. You know, if it were a short-term endeavor, then I could see doing that, but it's definitely not.
Member Bennett?
I am sympathetic to residents who with me have raised the issue that this is something that, because it's not dependent on usage, it's per account, that it isn't as income or property value sensitive as some other things. But it's my understanding that the rationale or the principle that underlies assessments, street assessments, is that people are paying into a shared system, as it were, and that with our infrastructure funded through special assessments, people who are using that infrastructure are paying for that general system, not just the street in front of their house, but actually the shared system. And what I know of sidewalks and other facilities is they're not on every street in the city. They won't be on every street in the city. So under our current system of funding, people are being asked to pay for them through special assessments, and a lot of other people may be walking past their houses who may never share in the cost of that. And by both trying to make special assessments more affordable, I think we also are expanding the cost of a shared system over the users of that system, who may or may not be property owners, may or may not, again, live on a street where they are paying for a sidewalk, but in fact they may walk a block away and use a sidewalk. Another thing about special assessments is it's my understanding that property tax exempt entities, if infrastructure is funded through property taxes, the property tax exempt entities, private and public schools, churches, the hospital, do not share in the cost of that infrastructure if it's funded through property taxes. With special assessments, they do share in that cost, and with this fee, they will also share in that cost. So the discussion, Member Swenson, and the questions that you raised earlier about crosswalks and sidewalks near where a hospital for its employees wants to provide a farmer's market, which is a wonderful goal, but there also might be some infrastructure.
But I don't even have sidewalks coming from two ways getting to it.
Right, and so there are infrastructure needs associated with that. There are infrastructure expenses that go with that. And with this adoption, we are preserving that principle that the users of the shared system are paying into the cost of their shared system.
You said that very eloquently.
Yeah, you did.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You know,
Right.
I don't see a need for a sunset, but I would like to have a discussion about a periodic discussion, like every other year or something, about how much progress have we made and where are we with now being able to build out our sidewalk system. Are we ever going to not need this? Well, it's like anything else. No. But the purpose for it will continue to be needed, because if on some future date we actually have built every sidewalk we want, we will then be going back and rebuilding those that are doing their things with the tree roots and being driven over, and whatever happens with concrete that needs to be maintained. So I think it will always be there, but I think that we can do ourselves a favor as fellow homeowners in this city, making sure that, all right, we're doing this, just want to make sure that we're still on the mark and this is serving our purpose. I don't want to see it go up either. I think it should be frozen at this level, knowing that the cost of sidewalks will not freeze. But I think just in order to make it as palatable as possible to our homeowners, that is what we're going to need to do. Just looking at the mail we're receiving some mail that says, go for it, this is good, this is the future, we're glad you're doing this. And then there's other mail from people who are on fixed incomes and wondering, now wait a minute, you're going to raise my utility bill for what? And so we want to find a way for us to be able to be progressive, to meet the needs, but still do it in a reasonable, low-cost manner.
Member Bennett?
Manager Neal, would the review of the CIP that we undertake every 2 years, the capital improvement program, and the progress reports that we get with that, as well as the budgeting that we do with that, would that be a context in which we could do the review that Member Brindle asks for?
It would, and I would also say that during our quarterly business meetings, we'll identify this as just another one of our enterprise funds, and so you'll be able to see what we're forecasting to come in and what actually did come in and what did we spend. From a spending standpoint, though, that's where those kind of decisions would come in.
And again, the definition of an enterprise fund is not necessarily a business, which is what I think people think of it as commonly, but rather a way to group expenses and revenue in a way that makes it very transparent and clear where the money is coming from and what it's being spent on.
That's right.
All right, I think it was a good conversation. With respect to fixing the rate, I think everybody on this council, as long as we're all working together, is going to make sure that this rate stays at $1.45 per month per utility per meter. The sunset issue I'm comfortable with. Subsequent councils can deal with that, and I think that fixed purpose that we have sort of firewalled off this money for the pedestrian cyclist safety fund is a very laudable sort of goal to have, and not have it just disappear into the general fund. I think all of us, none of us, I should say, none of us would be interested in that kind of a purpose for the franchise fee, and we've had it in mind for this specific use that gets firewalled off from everything else. So thank you for that discussion. That was helpful for me.
Can I move this?
Second.
We've got two of them here to deal with. So I've got 2012-15, which is the CenterPoint Energy ordinance first. You got a motion and a second on that one.
I will move the second.
Any further?
Then we'll wait, and you can. Okay.
Oh, good.
Let's move the. Any discussion on 2012-15? All right. Do we need a roll call on that one? We do not.
Not if we're waiving.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Carried. That was the second reading.
That was second reading.
And then we've got 2012-16, which is the franchise ordinance related to Excel.
I will move that.
Second.
Motion and second. Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Carried. And now, gentlemen, thanks for your patience. We're going to move to the next item on the agenda, which is sketch plan review, a discussion about a potential restaurant location at 7700 France Avenue.
Sorry about that. This property is
Got our attention.
is located down on the southern border of the city, 7700 France, on the west side of France. This is the property here. It's currently zoned POD2, Planned Office District. The site is 17 acres in size. It contains an existing 6-story office building and a 1-story bank here. This is the entire site. You see the west side is used, a local car dealer leases spaces and parks cars there. What the applicant is proposing to do is construct a restaurant here in the northeast corner of the site, highlighted in red. It would be about a 7,500 square foot restaurant, upscale for fine dining. It would seat about 250 people, and there would be 93 dedicated spaces approximately in this location here. The location of the building meets all the setback requirements of the POD district. There potentially could be outdoor dining in this area. This is a look at the building. It would be made of high-quality stone, metal, windows, again, potential outdoor seating. Another angle of the building. The primary issue with this is, again, this is located in a POD zoning district, which does not allow a freestanding restaurant. Restaurants are allowed within an existing office building. So when this was considered for sketch plan by the Planning Commission, we took a look at two options: rezone the site to PUD or amend the ordinance that would allow restaurants in the planned office district too. So we looked at all of the potential sites in the POD district. I'll just quickly go through them. There are not too many. The first one is down on 494 and 169. The Helmuth and Johnson site is located right here, and there's a medical office building here. So that would be the first site. The next area would be along Highway 100, just east of the industrial park. All of these parcels in here would be allowed a restaurant. Just for a point of reference, this is the new Public Works facility located right here. And then the other POD areas would be along France Avenue. This is the subject property that we're looking at right here. There's a small POD2 site to the north, and then straight to the west of Southdale is the office building complex, and Tavern on France is located there. When the Planning Commission considered amending the ordinance, the zoning ordinance, to allow restaurants in the POD district, they had some reservations, concerned about introducing fast food into this area. So they, I think the general consensus of the Planning Commission was to lean more toward doing a PUD where we could put specific regulations for the type of restaurant, should we believe that a restaurant is appropriate for this site. So with this, again, this is just a sketch plan review for non-binding comments by the City Council. David Anderson is here from Frauenschuh to answer any questions, and I can stand for any questions that you might have.
Member Swenson.
I realize when I'm sitting here looking at the group that I'm the only one that was on the Planning Commission 18 years ago when we discussed why we did it that way. But the reason was that we were trying to control fast food restaurants. And so that the reason was there then. If the reason still stands now, then I would be more interested in PUD, but that's the history of it. I did have one question. There's a lot behind this, so if you could show the land plat. I think it's called U, Outlot U or something. It was one of your first slides. Okay. So behind that building is all that parking, but that's not included in this lot. That's owned separately?
This is all one parcel.
Okay. So you didn't really, when you were showing parking for different things, you showed what the parking would be. Yep. You didn't show what that parking went to. So you just only showed shared parking? Is that what I'm to understand?
Yes, it would all be a shared parking arrangement.
Okay, so underlined tract U is still considered parking for the existing office building, and that is why this doesn't have any parking issues involved with it, correct?
Correct, right.
Okay, that was my only question right now.
Okay, other questions for Director Teague? Member Bennett?
Yes, Director Teague, there was some discussion at the Planning Commission about sidewalks. We know we have them at some places on the west. Do they extend this far?
Boy,
I tried to look at the comprehensive plan, sidewalk plan, and see if I could spot it in that.
I don't believe we
I don't think there's
have
any.
existing sidewalks out there on the west side now. But that
Okay.
would certainly be something we would look at wanting them to put in, at least for this this segment as...
That's one of my comments, is that I would really like to see, I know that there are people who are drawn to live and work in the area because they do want to visit places such as is proposed here. And they want to be able to walk to them. They're finding more barriers than they might anticipate before they move in. Hopefully we will be able to address that, and the promenade is wonderful, but people need a way to come off the promenade and access the businesses, so that I would hope that with the planning of this as it moves forward in design, that that is one of the elements. And also along the drive-in, not only along France Avenue, but I think so that people can complete that entrance in. Related to that, I see in the schematic or in the drawing, a entrance that looks like it might be on one of the sides of the building.
It looks like right in this area.
Okay. I would really hope to see a design that actually encourages people to make that trip in on foot as well as by car.
Yeah, I think that's excellent comments. Not only provide pedestrian connections from along France, but from the existing office building.
Finally, two more questions. What is the reference to Man France Avenue Theater that appeared on the map that you showed?
It used to be a drive-in movie.
Well, I remember that, and is that what that's
what it is.
Okay.
Drive-in theater.
All right. That answers that question. And finally, I think we can see from our own experience and the experience of other communities that there is that complementary nature of restaurants with a more evening focus and the businesses, but also to offer the lunch service. One of the things I think this is almost more of a business advice type of thing, but I think that setting is very important. And I noticed that there is some landscaping depicted in the drawing, but I would hope that there might be some thought given to the kind of environment that can be created around it.
Let's bring Mr. Anderson up here and talk about that.
Okay, thank you.
Amongst other things, I think you've heard some of these issues at the Planning Commission being addressed as concerns. Mr. Anderson, welcome. Your name, give us your full name and address, business address, please.
Senior Vice President with Frau & Schuh, 7101 West 78th Street in Bloomington. Thank you for having us tonight and sharing this concept with you, and that's what we're here this evening to share is a concept for a plan. We met with your Planning Commission on September 12th, of course, and you pointed out some of the discussion your staff did as well on approaching this as a PUD for a couple of different reasons. One, we agree with the approach allowing the flexibility for this development to work in harmony with the existing office use there and the existing tenants and use of the property. In addition, we see long-term that this property has much more development potential. We talked about the large surface parking lot to the west portion of the site, over 1,400 parking spaces. We really see this in the future being a site that will respond to market demand in the office market particularly. So we want to plan with that in mind and have a tool and a mechanism to come back and talk with the City Council about future PUD amendments. I think in the meantime, the concept of the design to have it very pedestrian oriented, to have it have a presence on the street, on the avenue, was an important consideration here. I think some of the architectural theme that you might see in this plan is one concept that probably will evolve based on who the user is and their particular market and appeal, but it will definitely be an upscale effort, and I think some of the exterior and interior elements of this project will definitely reinforce that. I was just speaking with Eric Reiners, our planner on this project, about the existence of a sidewalk, and there is a sidewalk that runs right along the avenue. And Mr. Teague, is there a...
Right along France Avenue, Mr. Anderson?
Yeah, it runs right along France Avenue, north-south on the west side.
Oh, on the west side.
Correct.
Is it a bulkhead, behind the bulkhead? Yeah, I think so.
Okay. There we go. Voila. Okay. So it might be hard to see here, but if you look closely, there's almost touching the curb and the asphalt. That's what we were referencing along the avenue. So how this use might tie into that relative to sidewalk?
Or possibly replace it. We've Whole Foods did a wonderful job of putting in new sidewalk and landscaping with that project.
I think if you can get pedestrians away from the street with a boulevard-style sidewalk instead of a behind-the-bulkhead sidewalk, we'd be a lot better off.
Yeah.
And
Mr. Mayor,
you're going to get a lot more connectivity out of it.
Mr. Mayor, what I was pointing out, and I think was a question, was there a sidewalk there or not?
Right.
Okay.
Well, but I think the other part that Member Bennett mentioned is the accessibility of easy access from the building over to the restaurant, which might be one of the primary buildings that serves the restaurant for lunch. You've got a building to the north. You want them to be able to get over from their parking lot, at least up onto the sidewalk to get there. We watch people all the time along France try to walk from one area to the other where there isn't any sidewalk, and that's even worse. But your goal is it not to be winter and them not to be trying to climb over a pile of a snowbank to get to your restaurant. So, when you say upscale restaurant, could you describe that for me?
Sure.
Could you give me an example of what you consider as an upscale restaurant?
Mr. Mayor, council member, in this case, it's a concept at this point in that market.
Totally
it would be.
I know you're not naming names of people you're out there talking to. I'm not asking you for that.
Sure. You have restaurants in the community right now. Ciao Bella might be an example of a restaurant, McCormick and Schmick. Others, tenants in the Galleria, there's a couple of examples of those types of tenants. But that will be responsive to the market. I think it will be consistent, with architecture, with service, and a theme that will definitely be very, very attractive to the market and very consistent with France Avenue.
We had years ago, probably 9 or 10 years ago maybe, one of these lots proposed building an out restaurant in the front of their parking lot. Was that you? Because I've sat in on a discussion of a restaurant either in this site or one north of it. But it was so many years ago that, no. Okay, thanks.
Well, I think that all of the council thinks the PUD is the way to go, just as the Planning Commission did, so keep that in mind. And then I think you've also gotten the clear message that landscaping, intense landscaping, if I can use that term, would be terrific. And I think you want to insulate your outside diners from France Avenue. I think Tavern on France has done a pretty good job of that, and creating a nice environment with a busy street right next door. So. And then the accessibility issue, I think you've gotten that message loud and clear. Anything else?
Well, and rather than think of it as tying into an existing bulkhead sidewalk, in our comprehensive plan, we talk about new sidewalk being a boulevard sidewalk, and those boulevards can be of varying width. And understanding that it's your property, but it permits you to actually landscape more expansively. It creates more of a garden setting, or still keeps that visibility. One example would even be the screening of the Fairview Southdale parking ramp. They've got a great boulevard green space going on that's like an oasis on a summer day. So I think rather than a limitation, I think thinking of that combination of accessibility and landscaping joined together could really give you a nice setting.
Yeah. Mr. Mayor, thank you. We appreciate these comments. That's exactly what we were here for. We want to look at this as a step towards a long term for this property. We really think there's some quality opportunities. So these will all be definitely thought through and in continuation with your staff.
Can I ask one order question?
We concur. Member Swenson, go ahead.
Sorry, I didn't want him to sit down.
No.
Is this something that you'll have a tenant and then build it, or you'll build it and look for the tenant?
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember, this would be driven by a specific tenant, and it will be designed to their requirement. So we would
Build
be
to suit.
correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for
Yes.
coming this evening.
Just a comment about the
Brindle.
sidewalk. I just want to make sure that we're communicating on the sidewalk, and that is that the sidewalk would be separated from France Avenue. So you'd have lawn or some landscaping between the sidewalk and France Avenue. And that's the vision here, is that the sidewalk is not right at France, but it's actually leading almost to your establishment. So it wouldn't even have to be a straight line. It could come along, it could come in. But in any case, you have a buffer between the pedestrian and France Avenue. That's the vision of France Avenue.
Sure. Mr. Mayor, Councilmember, thank you. That was a point well taken.
Yep, thanks.
All right, thank you. All right, we've got a resolution 2012-137 accepting various donations.
So moved.
Second. All right, we got a second, and all those discussion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed to adopting the resolution say nay. Resolution's adopted. We've got donations this reporting period to the Edina Arts Center, and the donors' names will be posted on the website. Correspondence and petitions. Anything other than what we have on the dais this evening? All right, good. Mayor and council comments. I think we are starting this week with Member Sprague.
Good, thank you. I noticed in the ETC minutes from August 16th, Member Franzen said he attended the 2013 Neighborhood Roadway Reconstruction Informational Meeting, and it was one of the best ran public meetings he'd ever attended. And in speaking with neighbors, they also felt the same way. Do you concur? Okay, that's great. That's great to hear that we're making progress. And this very difficult process we go through every year on street reconstruction, we learn something new every year, and I like to see that we put that knowledge to use to make this process better and better. And I know that we've revamped the communications plan, and I'm glad to see the results. The other thing was I was here absentee voting the other day. I saw Member Brindle, and I found a couple people that said they wanted to be on the council in the future, and they snuck in here on the dais. I couldn't believe the audacity of these people. Let's take a look. See if we have a picture of those people.
Is that plural?
I think it was a man and a woman. Yeah,
That's my recollection.
as far as I remember. Oh, there they are. Look at those two. Mayor, that's Nick Sprague in your chair, and Kelly Sprague is in mine. Look at those two going at it, the future politicians. So they might be revisiting that franchise fee that we talked about.
Nick's reaching up, pushing that button on his microphone.
Exactly. My hope is by then every sidewalk section is complete in Edina. So let's keep that vision alive. That's all I got. Thanks.
Thank you. Member Swenson.
We have this new thing that we get called comment emails, Jennifer. And most of the time they're just remarking on something. But one woman, was really upset that we planned this council mayor voting forum for the night of the debate, the vice presidential debate, which we have a presidential debate tonight, which we obviously planned this council meeting for that. But we don't have any control over it. The League of Women Voters chose that, and they chose it, months ahead of time before that schedule. So I don't really have a good way of responding to that person other than getting out pen and pencil, which, my thank you letters even to friends are few and far behind. Is there an email address that I can? Did I miss that? Did you? Oh, were you able to? Because the first person, I couldn't find anything other than a street address on. The one that commented on, I can't remember what she commented on, but. Okay, so I do have the ability to comment back. Thank you.
Good. I want to go back to Member Sprague for a moment. We had a real estate update, and I think since he is
housing
a member
statistics
from the real estate industry, I thought he could maybe give us a quick synopsis of what the report says from
Thank you, sir.
Minneapolis Area Association of Realtors.
So in the Twin Cities, median price has risen 10% this year, and foreclosures continue to be purged out. In Edina, our median sales price through September year over year is 0.6% above last year this same time. So median price $347 in 2012 year to date. Last year $345, and it's kind of gone up and down this whole year, but really kind of tracked a baseline. So code word here is stability, and that's what the markets have needed for a long time. Edina has stabilized first of all the markets, and we heard some of the ramifications of that tonight in the bond rating. But anyhow, that's a report.
Good, thank you. All right, Member Bennett.
Thank you. Looking at some of the correspondence in the packet, I have a question about when the rental issues, or we were going to look at whether or not we needed a rental property ordinance, and we had an email from a resident who was having a very frustrating experience with landlord and property management company. And so I guess I have two questions. First of all, in terms of schedule, I know that we are working hard, our boards and commissions are working hard, staff is working hard. Is this something that's going to be coming back to us next year or early next year? And also, what resources can someone who is experiencing these issues contact in the community? And then I have more, but I'll wait for answers.
Karen, do you want to take at least the
Actually,
schedule?
we just tweaked our work session plan for the rest of the year to have the rental housing issue come up at your November 20th work session.
Great, thank you. And will there be, I know that we do communications on upcoming topics. This is probably one in which I think there's concern from residents who are renters and also residents who live in neighborhoods with rental properties. So possibly we could have some kind of advance notice of the discussion.
We can do a general notice of, you're right. I will say, I have to say though, I don't think I saw that same email. What we're going to talk to you about would not have any impact on that particular frustration that was being expressed.
Okay. But we do support, and I'm blank on the name of it, but it is renters, it is Homeline, thank you. And we get a report every year about how many Edina residents use it. So, and I know the information is available through the Edina Resource Center.
Okay.
Is it also available on our website? Homeline? Okay.
So in other words, if someone does have a concern like this, if they call the city receptionist or go to the website, they should be able to find contact info for the resource center, which in turn will, or for the agency itself, that can provide some service.
They could also call legal aid that does a lot of this kind of work.
Depending on
the financial
income
condition
qualification,
of the person.
yes. And then I think I actually worked in this field. There is limit on what legal aid societies can provide because of funding cuts, and their eligibility criteria have risen, and the types of cases they can handle has been reduced. But there also are volunteer law clinics that are available through the Bar Association and other entities, so that possibly is also a resource that people could look for, because it did sound like a really frustrating experience. I also wanted to ask...
Just one, before you move on, there should be some resource material from that 06 to 08 period. I think this issue was looked at before in terms of, are you thinking about the licensing of... This whole licensing issue was looked at between 05 and 08 sometime. And there should be a lot of material on it in your
fact,
files.
that's largely what you're going to see, an updated version of what you've seen a few years ago.
Yeah, okay.
And then, Director Houle, we also received some questions about the signage that's related, I think, to the Bike Boulevard in the Southdale area, Southdale Road. And I know that originally the focus, or for a large part of the discussion, there was a focus on north of 62. Can you tell us what has happened there? And I think somebody was talking about a renaming of the street, which didn't seem to be something that I recalled.
Can I comment on that? That's in my neighborhood. The Bike Boulevard markings were added as part of our passing of the Bike Boulevard. The markings themselves, I don't know what the spec was for it, but my opinion is they're too large. I think you want a symbol to be as large as necessary to communicate the need, but not larger to be, sign pollution. I know that term is loose and we use that around, but there's a right size for things. That's my opinion. So
So in this instance, it's symbols and signage. I haven't had a chance to go out and
it
do
is
this.
symbols and signage. And I apologize for interrupting you. I just wanted to add that commentary.
You'll see it around.
The markings that you're
Roslyn
referring to are pavement markings that were put on the pavement on Southdale Road and then on Cornelia Drive. Those markings were identical to what they used in Minneapolis on their bike boulevards. If you recall, we have Liant Engineering that did the project for us, or designed the project, and they also designed the projects over Minneapolis. So they use the same pavement markings, and I would concur with Councilmember Sprague that they are large, and that as they wear off, is that we will replace them with something that's smaller in the future. The signage hasn't been placed yet. The signposts are still in back order, so we're anticipating those in the next few weeks to come in, and then you'll see some signage on the project also.
And that signage will say what?
It'll give the bike routes signs,
Okay.
the bike boulevards. to
But
route
it's not
people through those
renaming
areas.
the streets.
Absolutely not, no.
No, it would, the
Okay.
neighbor was confused because it says Boulevard, so they thought that was renaming the streets.
Okay, and I can see from a resident's perspective with addresses, checks, different things that bear a person's address, that can be a concern if it's really a street name change. And that leads me to my next
Well,
point.
that's a great point, though, you're making, is that's part of that whole communication situation that we should be having here. I mean, there should be something on the web that says, what does bike boulevard painted on the street mean? Maybe it's on there, I don't know, but it should be part of our communication strategy. If we're only the second city in the United States beyond Minneapolis to do this kind of a wholesale bike signage implementation, we ought to have an enormous amount of material on our website, including some videos about how to drive some of these streets.
I concur. I think we all know that we could have executed this differently, and we can improve. But there is a subcommittee on the Transportation Commission that's working intensely on this, and they have some great ideas. So I'm hoping that the staff and this committee can get together and brainstorm, because I think they, like I said, they have some great innovative ways of helping to communicate on new facilities.
Good. One additional point is, I know from attending the meetings, Director Houle, that you held about this project before it was even coming up for a vote, that there was pretty strong attendance from folks on 54th Street in Wooddale. When was notice given to the folks south of 62 about the project and sort of an opportunity for them to weigh in on it?
I don't know. I'll have to find out. I pull up that data, but I'm not sure when they were notified.
Okay, and as Member Sprague points out, it's a learning experience, and we obviously have made real strides in communicating more clearly, I think, on road reconstruction, so we can look forward to that with this as well. Because I think that was mostly, in this letter, in addition to possibly, some misinformation, it sounds like, too, it was a question of just sort of who knew what when. And so I think going forward, that'll be a real good thing to keep in mind.
Good, thank you. Member Brindle.
Just one more brief comment about the bike boulevard signs. It struck me as odd that they would be in the motorist lane, and that's where they are, is they're out in the motorist lane. So it ought to be, as you say, when they wear off, we'll put them where they belong and smaller. So the bike boulevard sign really ought to, I suppose the fact is you're alerting the motorists that they're on a bike boulevard.
Right.
But the sign is going to do that, but the painted symbol on the road can be in the bike lane at that point.
Well, what's misleading for a driver is he may think he's not even supposed to be on that
Well,
road.
that's my point.
Yeah.
That's my point.
Yeah, actually, the purpose of the bike boulevard is to alert the drivers. It's not for the actual bicyclist itself. And so that's why they put them right in the middle of the roadway.
The pavement markings on this, and not to hammer this thing, but they're all new. They're all new, and so I do think that taking a step back and just kind of looking at, now that we've got this, maybe this whole route all painted, now we can live with it and modify it, and then going forward, use those modified markings that seem to have passed the test a little bit better.
The it could be Cheryl as well. I mean, Cheryl will communicate to
Be a
both the
Cheryl,
biker
that's-
and the driver.
Yep.
So, you know, we are innovating and
Yep.
being on the cusp. We have to make adjustments as we go, as you say, and I'm glad that we're doing it, and we're going to learn from it, and then we'll, if we find that a Cheryl is more appropriate, then we can do that. I know that we've talked about the ETC and Director Houle this winter getting together on some road standards for bike lanes and bike markings and signage, and I think that conversation will probably capture this, and maybe they can even give their review as to what they'd like to do phase 2 if there's a more improved situation.
Okay.
If you all remember, though, we asked an engineer to go over this plan before it was implemented, and we accepted their recommendation. So, I think what Member Brindle said is true. We're going to find out what our residents can learn to live with and adjust to, and what they can't. And are we going to continue a discussion on Wooddale tonight or not?
No.
Oh, I am.
I'm not. You can when we get there. But I will say, things look a lot different on paper than they do on the pavement. That's what I find. But anyway, a couple other things. On Sunday, October 14th, it was a very chilly, windy morning. And Tour de Edina, I arrived. I got back in my car. I went home and changed clothes and put on some warmer clothes. But we had, I think, topped out like 75, between 75 and 80 people, which was good. It was smaller than last year. The weather wasn't as good as last year. We actually had more pre-registered than last year. And being Minnesotans, we wait till the last minute to see what we're going to do that day. So, we had our pre-registrants, and then other people showed up. But we had a great time. The Edina Sun Current was there taking pictures. The Edina Magazine was there taking pictures. The financial sponsors, Alina Health and Primrose Schools, one of the new businesses in our city. Primrose is remember that parking lot we subdivided? Yes. Yes, Primrose is under construction there in a darling little building that is a school for tiny ones up to kindergarten. And so that will be there. It's a terrific organization. And then Think Mutual Bank they did all the food. So they did bananas, granola bars, and water for the tour. So it was good. We had good participation. Pedal for Parkinson's, a good friend of mine has Parkinson's, and she is very active. This is an organization that basically she started, and she's collecting all these manners of wheels. She's got a Cycle 5. She's got a side-by-side tandem, a couple of recumbents, and she's staying active and staying healthy, and just a terrific participant. So my big thanks to Liz Ogren for all of her enthusiasm. And after the candidate forum that we had recently, I just want to throw another thank you out to the League of Women Voters of Edina. They did a great job, Joni, and all of your cohorts. They did a great job. It was well organized. It was well carried off. And just a quick hello to John Keprius, who has been out now for a while, and just letting him know we're thinking about him.
I just want you to know that I think I whipped up on Member Brindle by about 10, 15 seconds on that bike ride, yeah.
Oh. You mean she didn't take you up one of those hills like we did last year where I thought I was going to die and I had to get out and walk my bike?
No. She just lollygagged along, and I wasn't much better. But she was busy talking to the manager of the of Southdale Mall all the way.
Catching up.
Catching up on personal stuff, so. Let's see, I'll talk about a few things. First, on the 3rd of October, Manager Neal and I went over to the MLC meeting in Woodbury, and we saw a presentation by Myra and Franz, the Commissioner of Revenue, on tax reform that the governor's proposing, and that'll be interesting to see what they finally do. They do propose in the way of tax reform. So, very solid guy, very good presentation. And Member Bennett, you forgot to talk about the Quasqui Centennial meeting that you were instrumental in, and you've got a role there with respect to one of the committees. That was on the 4th of October at night. That was right after they did the Waters groundbreaking, and so I went over there for that. But then I went over to where Member Bennett and other people were at the Quasqui Centennial kickoff. Maybe you want to talk a little bit about that.
If I may. It was a lovely event, and thanks to everybody who participated. It was so successful that people were in small conversations after it adjourned, signing up for different projects for next year and planning. Director Benarott will be providing some communications through the About Town, not more articles, but articles that are focused on the city's history. The photograph that's on the front every issue will be not only seasonal but also historic, and the Historical Society, which is the organization coordinating the Quasqui Centennial Celebration, will be working on those photographs and the articles. And so the first event, the public event that's being organized by this committee, will be the 4th of July parade, and we're encouraging people to be really creative and energetic with their neighborhoods, churches, civic groups. In September, there will be a house tour with 3 houses, the Baird House, and a country club colonial on Arden, and a Morningside bungalow on 44th Street. So different homes, different periods, different styles, and I believe that the League of Women Voters will be docents at the Baird House on 50th Street, and I think that the Morningside Neighborhood Association will try to serve as docents on 44th Street, but that leaves one more house needing docents. And then the third and last public citywide event is Founders Day, which is December 12th, 2013, and we will be I am in charge of that event. We're going to have displays in the lobby of historic photographs. That'll be citywide year-round. History Happened Here, which is photographs of the historic places and events in city history that took place on that spot where the photograph is. And people who wish can participate in that, both in suggesting different photographs, providing them from their personal stores or their church or schools stores, or also funding. They're looking for funders because there will be a cost to preparing those displays. For Founders Day, again, the display in the lobby, we're hoping to have tours at the Grange and at Cahill School, and then a brief program at 7 o'clock in the evening with vignettes from city history of no more than a couple of minutes in length each. The program itself will run no more than an hour, and we're looking to tell some of the untold as well as more familiar stories, and that was something that people were actually signing up for that night, so that was exciting. So there are a lot of opportunity for groups in the community to tie in. Again, school reunions, church special Sundays, special services at other places in the community, Fairview Hospital. It's the full city's full history that we're hoping to tell in the 125th year.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Good. Yeah, thank you very much. On the 8th of October, I attended the Regional Council of Mayors meeting. We had the Met Council there again as they were out here talking about Thrive 2040 and getting input from the mayors. On the 12th of October, I went over to the Community Harvest party at Highlands. That was they just had some terrific food over there, and they had a chef from Salute who had used some of the materials from the garden to make a potato soup. It was just terrific. Then October 13th was the Edina Day of Service, which was the day before Tour de Edina. And we had highway cleanup, and then I went over to the Ed Fund run, and then also did some buckthorn work down on Minnehaha Creek with some folks. So
you're almost a triathlete. Just add a swim to that, and you'll be there.
Yeah, I got different techniques than you though. It's garbage cleanup, and then.
Well, now wait a second. If you had been at Centennial Lakes, you could have jumped in the lake, and then that would have been three events.
And then on the, was it just yesterday, we had a meeting with some residents over on Xerxes who are trying to change that county road into a de facto 4-lane road, from a de facto 4-lane road to a 2-lane road as it should be. So that'll be coming to the ETC, I think, for a plan review next Thursday. And they're going to try to get it striped yet this fall if everything goes well here. But the county's got a good plan in mind, and it'll help create a better condition over there in terms of community safety. The cars are going very fast over there.
So, Mayor, same concept as France?
I'd say similar, very similar,
Okay.
very similar. They're actually, those residents in Edina living on Xerxes actually think that the traffic on Xerxes increased when we restriped France. So I don't know if there's qualitative data on that,
yeah.
but at least that's their instinct. But they need some help over there. And they've also got that behind the bulkhead sidewalk situation over there that's, to me, very dangerous because cars are coming down there fast and trying to force it into a 4-lane situation. So we got some work to do over there to help our residents out. And then we all got invited to the Hindu celebration of Diwali on November 13th. You'll see in your email an invitation to Diwali, the night of the 13th. And Manager Neil knows all about it. He's been to one before, and he said it's a lot of fun.
Combination of Halloween and New Year's Eve, so it's fun.
All right. That's it for me. I'm sorry. I wanted to bring up Wooddale again. I get this ongoing safety concern about Wooddale Avenue. I mean, it seems to me that everywhere else that we laid in these bikeways, they coexist nicely with the car traffic, and I still have this ongoing concern about safety on Wooddale. I don't know, Director Houle, if you've got any updates. I'm sure people are getting to be a little bit more educated, but it still seems to me when I make that turn going southbound off 50th that it's just totally counterintuitive, and it's difficult to get used to, and I'm wondering if, what's the experience in the last week or 10 days since we had this discussion?
Well, Mayor and Council, we're still getting good publicity on educational publicity, I should say, on that from our news stations. We've had 3 out of the 5 run this. Actually, 4 out of the 5 actually run the story and educating people, the general public, which is great because it gets it out to the whole region on how to drive the advisory bike lanes. Our observations are people are getting it, that they're moving over, driving in the advisory bike lanes. We contemplated putting up those delineator posts on the parking bay lines to give that feeling of that you shouldn't be moving over into the parking lane, and we hesitate to do that. We don't want to keep throwing different things to the driver, so we're not going to put those up like I'd originally said. So, but we're still, we still have the variable message signs out there. The city owns both of those, so we'll keep them out till the snow flies or beyond that.
Are there? I know this is not MUTCD because it's a federal experiment, but is there any signage options?
We are also looking at putting up some permanent signs that identifies that as an advisory bike lane corridor, similar to where you see crime corridors or whatever in different parts, not Edina, but in other parts of the metro area, so that people know that when they turn down that they actually see a sign that says advisory bike corridor, so they will think, well, this is a little bit different than a normal corridor.
It doesn't have a graphic on it, though, right?
No, it'll just be verbiage, just an advisory bike corridor. But this is what we want to. What my goal is to work with that subcommittee with the ETC, that's communications, and bounce different ideas off of those folks and come up with something that
Member
the
Swenson wants to
public
comment. Member Swenson wants to comment too, but 2 weeks ago I had a hard time expressing myself. I couldn't quite get the sense of what was bothering me, but here's what I think it is. As I said before, everywhere else I feel like we're coexisting well. The bike is fitting in well with the operation of a motor vehicle, which is the primary mode of transportation. And for me, on Wooddale, it seems like the bicycle has the primary space, and the car is relegated to a secondary position. And I just don't think that should be the situation. That's the way it feels to me, and it consequently feels unsafe. Anyway, Member Swenson.
I guess I would agree with you, but I don't want to change the striping on the side. The only thing I really want to do is add the dashed yellow line back to the middle of the road to tell them where they're supposed to stay, because then I think it balances out where the car's supposed to be relative to the oncoming traffic. And that seems to be the biggest issue, is they can't perceive where they are, so there comes the risk of the oncoming car. So it's just a personal opinion, but I guess I kind of feel the same way, that we kind of upset the balance a little bit. And I thought that our letters would start going down as people adjusted. They really haven't. We've continued to have, so I thought I'd give it 2 weeks just to see if they kind of smoothed out, as often that happens when we initiate something new, and they really haven't. So I don't want to paint out anything. I think the concept is still good. I just want to put the balance back, I think, to where the mayor wants to, well, I don't know if he wants to do what I want to do, but just, I agree with you.
Yeah, I was thinking that putting the center line back in and taking out the dashed white lines would help, and just leave the bike symbol on there for share of the road, like it's been for years. But from a traffic engineering standpoint, I don't know what's the right thing to do. It just feels unsafe to me, and I think that's the concern that most people express to me. I would say I'm getting calls or emails 4 to 1 concerned about safety, and it was kind of brought home in spades when we were working down on the creek on Saturday. A guy a little bit older than me said, "Gee, I really like those bike lanes in Wooddale," and this young guy in his 40s said, "Are you kidding me? Those things are so unsafe." So it's kind of that tension that you see in the community. But I'd say the calls I'm getting are 4 to 1 against what we did.
Yep, I would still recommend to hold the course. I think that's going to take a little bit of time. If you recall, when it's different, but when they stripe burn, if you recall, that occurred about 12 years ago or so, and we still had about 6 months after that a population that was driving in the parking lanes or in the shoulders, thinking that was a lane of traffic, and so it took a long time for people to realize that this was no longer a 4-lane roadway itself. The roundabouts, I still go back to those. It took quite a long learning curve to how to navigate the roundabouts. I would say that this is another change of traffic control measures that people are going to have to learn how to navigate. Tonight I drove it from coming up from Public Works, and I was really impressed. Everybody was moving over, and that hasn't been the case the last few days, because every north-south trip that I make through the city, I try to go over to Wooddale and observe what's going on, and I just haven't seen that until tonight. And what I've actually seen a lot of times is really the southbound traffic, is that the southbound traffic is not moving over to the right and straddling the advisory bike lane. The northbound traffic has no issue, but it's the southbound traffic. So if we can get the southbound traffic to move over, I don't see that. I think it'll work out just fine over the years. But I would say hold the course and let's not put in a center line quite yet. And I also need to double check if we can even do that without jeopardizing our funding for the project.
I have to chime in here. I'm for holding the course as well. From what I read, research shows that adding the center line in just transfers risk back to the biker, because now they're not moving over enough to yield to the biker. That was on the memo you sent out as well. So I'm not for that at this point. I also know that our engineer and the ETC and the TLC are all for holding the course, and those are my experts on this thing. We have to temper that with our own judgment about what people can adjust to over time. But when the first roundabout went in, were we the only one of the few roundabouts in the region of surrounding cities?
For the most part, yeah. Yep.
And we know how difficult that was for people to adjust to. I mean, years later, I heard about that when I was knocking doors. So that's why I say you can't be, short-sighted about it. You got to give it some time. And if in your engineering judgment, it's not a safety hazard and there's not, accidents happening and we're not putting people at risk, then let's hold the course.
Member Bennett?
I think it's always important to keep in mind that there's perception and there's data. And perception is important, because if people perceive that they don't necessarily know what to expect, they slow down and they pay more attention. And I think on streets, streets anywhere, but particularly in residential areas where something unexpected can happen any minute. A child can run out of a yard, chasing a ball. We know that parking lane was being used as a two-way bike lane. What happens if somebody tips over into traffic? So it's really, that stretch of roadway is a roadway where people need to be paying attention. And not on cell phones and not texting. And I think that it seems like at this point, moving from perception to data, that's what people are doing. I appreciated the comments that Chief Long made in the Sun Current about what our data shows about accidents that happen on that stretch of roadway. And yes, there has been one unfortunate fender bender, but that's in a roadway that normally has 12 accidents a year. So I would also like to stay the course, at least for now, and gather more data so that we as a community have a better understanding of what works here for us. And I too have tried to take every opportunity I can to be on that roadway, and I'm noticing, I too am noticing that it seems to be something that people can and are figuring out.
I don't think speeds are slowing down over there. I see them still traveling at a fairly brisk clip. I agree with you, heading south too. I don't think they're moving over far enough to the right.
We will find out. We just put out tubes today for a week or so.
It just strikes me, though, I hate to belabor this, but if you go down on LaSalle in Minneapolis, behind the Hyatt all the way to Groveland or to Franklin, they've got advisory bike lanes, and it's a one-way, which should be safer. But they do not have the dashed white line. Every once in a while you'll have the bike symbol, and then you'll have some hash marks around it. But they don't have what appears to be almost a dedicated line with constant white dashed lines. And that should be a lot safer situation for a bike to be traveling in a single direction with cars. But we've got a 35-foot roadbed over on Wooddale where it looks to me like we've given the bike priority over the car. And there's something about it that's not right.
I think it's there that you and I are waiting to see. But it does sound, Wayne, like are you doing a speed count, a traffic count? What are you doing with your lines?
We're doing a speed study, a volume study and a speed study.
So my point is that if they wouldn't do what we did on Wooddale over on a one-way in Minneapolis, why are we doing it?
Well,
and why won't TLC let us change it?
Well, if you recall, the two options that we had to obtain this funding and to put this bike boulevard on is, one is to remove the parking, and two is, or if you don't remove the parking, is to put the advisory bike lanes. The Sharrows was not an option on Wooddale.
And by the way, the parking bay not being ever occupied is what creates some of the confusion. So you could just take the parking lane out and do dedicated lanes. That was the original discussion.
There's a lot of people parking over there. I see a lot of parking on Wooddale.
Well, one option, if you look at the parking lanes on Cahill and possibly the parking lane on Antrim, they're 6 feet and not 8 feet. So, that's one thing that could be done here, is a 6-foot parking lane, which would add 2 more feet in the drive lane. It doesn't eliminate the effect of needing to yield when you've got a parked car, a northbound car, a southbound car, and a bicycle, but it does alleviate some of the pressure.
It would pick up a couple feet. There's a process to go through to do that. We'd have to get a variance from the state aid folks to do that, and I don't know if they'd ever go down to 6 feet. They've gone down to 7 feet adjacent to a dedicated bike lane,
So
but not 6 feet.
So Cahill isn't a state aid road? How were we able to do that on Cahill?
Cahill doesn't actually have parking bays anymore. Those are actually bike lanes.
It has a parking lane.
By the park.
Oh,
but
by the park.
And that's 7
I
feet.
see.
That's 7 feet wide there.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
Okay. Manager Neal.
Thank you, Your Honor. Just a few things. One, going back to our discussion earlier tonight about the franchise fees and really more importantly, what we'll be using the franchise fees for. We have I've drafted a policy and reviewed it with staff on the guidance of how to deploy those funds. And we'll be forwarding it to the ETC for a review, I think next week, right? Next week. Once we get their comments back, we'll take a look at their comments and we'll share their comments with you and make that proposal to you in November. The Hornets Nest project continues to move forward at a nice clip. If you go out there now, you will see that the floor of the first story and the ceiling of the locker room is in. So that is in throughout the project, and they're starting to build the walls for the retail space on the at grade floor. So that looks very nice. The ADA pathway is in and built, and that's also looks very nice. Susie Miller has been instrumental in getting some labor from the Minnesota State Correctional Facilities to assist in doing a lot of painting, and actually saved a fair amount of money in how she's managed that project out there using that labor force. So we're pretty happy with that. Metro Transit and Simon Properties reached an agreement today on the transit center, so that's good news to report. That will be moving forward to get signed, and we're a signature to that agreement, so that's coming our way. We are the proud owners of one of the paper copies of the Southwest LRT draft environmental impact statement. And Carrie Teague, how tall would you estimate that is? About that tall. And so we have a paper copy of it. It's in the planning department. Maybe in a more usable form, we have a link that we'll put on our website, and if anybody wants to see it, they can see it. There are 3 public hearings at which folks can comment on the draft environmental impact statement, and I included those in my Friday report last week, but we'll share more information about those coming up as well. We are in a severe drought, as you might guess, and we've been instructed of that in the severe drought as a formal classification of drought by the state, and we've been asked to communicate what that means to the customers of our water system. Actually, Jennifer and Wayne and Brian and I are meeting tomorrow to start talking about what the state is asking us to communicate, and we'll share that with council as well. Finally, one thing I meant to ask council at the last meeting that I will ask you at this meeting, it was something that Director Houle mentioned earlier. We've talked before about the prospect of scheduling our early street recertificate or street reconstruction meetings, the special assessment hearings for upcoming projects. Whenever we have those project hearings at council meetings, we tend to, they really bog down our agenda because we're taking a lot of comment from folks at that point. And our suggestion is that we dedicate a special meeting to that and do nothing but those hearings in one meeting with nothing else on the agenda.
As an extra meeting, just to do that one thing, or take one meeting and just do that one thing? Define special meeting. Is it special because we're only doing one thing, or is it special because it's another date?
In what I was proposing to you, it was going to be an additional. So it was going to be December 11th.
Oh, Merry Christmas.
I think that's fine.
Oh.
Oh, yeah, it's okay.
When's our next town hall meeting?
November 10th. November 10th.
And that's, is that a 2-hour meeting?
Yes. Okay. Well, it's important. I see nods from 4 of you. We need to know, though, because we need to inform residents, and so we would, we'd come together like this, but we'd have one thing on the agenda that night, and it would be to conduct those hearings and just go one right after the other.
I think that's a good way to go.
All right, and
wouldn't want to bog down the rest of the schedule by
I
dedicating
I got a couple of more minutes that I could fill here tonight, but I won't, Your Honor, and so I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you. That prompt anything from anyone? All right. You stand adjourned. Thank you.
That's uncanny. Oh, yeah, I know. Brag.